to live always in the secret places of the Most High, to think only those thoughts that are inspired from above, to do all things in the conviction that God is with us, to give the best to all the world with no thought of reward, to leave all recompense to him who doeth all things well, to love everybody as God loves us, and be kind as he is kind, to ask God for everything and in faith expect everything, to live in perpetual gratitude to him who gives everything, to love God so much that we can inwardly feel that my Father and I are one. This is the prayer without ceasing, the true worship of the soul. Paths to the life beautiful. The thinking world of today is being filled with a phase of thought that has exceptional value. True, some of it is in a somewhat chaotic condition, but most of it is rich, containing within itself the very life of that truth that is making the world free. But in the finding of this truth, and in the application of its principles, where are we to begin? What are we to do first? And after we have begun, and find ourselves in the midst of a life so large, so immense and so marvelous that it will require eternity to live it all, what are the great essentials that we should ever remember and apply? What are the great centers of life about which we may build a greater and a greater life? These are questions that thousands are asking today, and the answer is simple. First, recognize the great truth that every individual can live his own life exactly as he may desire to live. Man, himself, is the real master of his own existence, and he, himself, may determine how perfect and how beautiful that existence is to be. Your life is in your own hands. You may live as you wish. You may secure from life whatever you desire, because there is no limit to life, and no limit to your capacity to live. The elements of life can be modified, changed, developed and perfected to comply with your own supreme demand. The increase of life can be realized in the exact measure of your largest need. You are in living touch with infinite life, and there is neither limit nor end to the source of your supply. To live in the constant recognition of this great truth, is to rise continually into higher and higher degrees of that mastery of life that gives man the power to live his life according to his most perfect ideals. To reach the goal that every ascending mind has in view, this truth, therefore, must ever be recognized and applied. It is one of those principles that we shall always require, no matter how high we may rise in the scale of divine being. Second, desire that which you desire, and desire with all the power of mind and soul. We invariably receive what we desire, no more, no less. We get what we wish for, if the power within that wish is as strong as we can make it. The fact that we can have an ideal proves that we have the power to secure it. The fact that we can formulate and appreciate a desire for something larger and better, proves that we can fulfill that desire. The great essential is to desire with the whole heart, that is, to give our desires all the life and power that we can possibly arouse from the depths of invincible being. The true desire and the true prayer are synonymous. The true prayer is invariably some immensely strong desire expressed when the human mind feels the sublime touch of the infinite mind, and the true desire must be in perfect touch with infinite life in order to be filled with the invincible power of that life. To cause every wish to come true, we must express all the power of mind and soul through every wish. But we cannot give expression to all the power within us until we awaken our spiritual natures, and we cannot awaken our spiritual natures until we begin to live with the infinite. The largeness and immensity of the supreme spiritual life within us comes forth only as consciousness is spiritualized, and we gain spiritual consciousness by living and thinking constantly in the lofty state where we actually feel that God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. We cannot desire too much. And when we desire with all the life and power that is within us, our desires shall positively be fulfilled. The wish must be wholehearted, not half-hearted. It must contain all the power we have, not simply the limited actions of shallow thinking, and it must contain soul, not simply emotion, but that deep, spiritual feeling that touches the very spirit of limitless life and power. Third, have faith in God, have faith in man. Have faith in yourself, have faith in everything, and have faith in faith. When you have confidence in yourself, you arouse everything that is stronger, greater and superior in yourself. In consequence, the more confidence you have in yourself, the more you will attain and accomplish. But the power of self-confidence is but an atom in comparison with the marvelous power of faith. Faith takes mind and soul into the greater realms of life. It goes out upon the boundless, and awakens those interior spiritual forces that have the power to do anything. This is why all things become possible when we have faith. It is the nature of faith to break bounds, to transcend limitations, and take life, thought and action into the universal. It is the nature of faith to unite the lesser with the greater, to unite the mind of man with the mind of God. Therefore, we shall always require faith. However far we may go into the greater, the superior and the boundless today, faith will take us farther still tomorrow. And that is our purpose, to realize our largest and dearest desires in the present, and then press on to the realization of other and far greater desires in the future. Fourth, depend upon the superior man within for results, and give this greater man the credit for everything you accomplish. When you depend upon the personal self, you place yourself in touch only with the lesser forces on the surface. You therefore will accomplish but little. But when you depend upon the supreme spiritual self, you place yourself in touch with the greater powers within, and results will be greater in proportion. When you give credit to the personal self, you ignore the interior spiritual man. You thereby fail to secure that greater wisdom and power that the spiritual man alone can supply. Instead of being led by that inner light that knows, you are led by the confusion of outer thought. You are turned away from the path that leads to truth, freedom and the perfect life, and your mistakes are many. Instead of being taken into the current of that invincible life that can carry you through to your very highest goal, you remain in the hands of mere physical energy, that energy that can do nothing more than simply keep your body alive. Whenever you accomplish something worthwhile, and give the praise to your own outer personal self, you immediately lose your hold on those powers through which those results were gained. In consequence, failure will begin, and you will have to retrace all your former steps to again gain possession of that power that can do whatever you may wish to have done. To constantly depend upon the greater self, to constantly expect the desired results from the greater self, and to always give credit to the greater self, is to constantly draw upon the limitless wisdom and power of the greater self, the supreme spiritual man within you. You thereby become larger and stronger in all the elements of your being, rising ever in the scale, gaining ground perpetually, and passing from victory to victory. What you desire you will receive because higher power is working through you, and as you ascend in the scale, there is nothing that you will not attain and accomplish. The principal cause of failure among those who are trying to live in harmony with real truth may be found in the general tendency to think of the outer person as the power that does things on the visible plane. But it is the interior man that gives the power, though the outer person is required to apply it. And the more thought we give to the interior man, the more life and power we bring forth from within. The interior man is the man, created in the image and likeness of God. It is therefore evident that when you begin to live with the life and the power of the interior man, the expression of real greatness and real spirituality will begin. And from that moment you will not be limited to the power of the personal self. Instead you will fill the personal self with that divine power from on high that is limitless, inexhaustible and invincible. Live for a great purpose, and hold the central idea of that purpose constantly before mind. Do not live for the mere sake of prolonging existence. Live for something that magnifies on the largest possible scale all the elements of existence. To live for a great purpose is to live a great life, and the greater your life, the greater the good that you will receive from life. The ruling desire of every living soul is to have life, and have it more abundantly. Therefore, to fulfill that desire we must continue perpetually to live for that which produces more life. No matter how rich we may become in the real, spiritual life, here is a principle that we must ever remember and apply. Do not work for yourself, work for the great idea that stands at the apex of your greatest purpose. The greater the idea for which you work, the greater will be your work, and it is he who does the greatest work that does the most for everybody, himself included. When your work is great you become a great power for good among thousands, and at the same time you do more for yourself than you could possibly do in any other manner. When you begin to live and work for a great purpose, you get into the current of great forces, great minds and great souls. You gain from every source. All the powerful lives in the world will work with you. You become a living part of that movement in the world that determines the greater destiny of man. You become one of the chief elements upon which will depend the future of countless generations yet to be. You become one of the chosen, of the Most High. To live for a great purpose is to live in the world of great ideas, and great ideas awaken great thoughts. Man is as he thinks. Great thoughts produce great minds, from great minds proceed great works, and great works constitute the building material with which the kingdom upon earth is to be constructed. When we begin to live for a great and good purpose, we place in action that law that causes all things to work together for good. Henceforth, nothing is in vain. Every person, thing or event that comes into our world will add to the welfare, the richness and the beauty of that world. All things become ministers of the life that is real life. We have been giving our best everywhere, and we are receiving the best from every source in return. To live for that which is high, lofty and sublime, is to walk with God. The love, the life, the power and the wisdom of the infinite will ever be with us, and to have such companions is to be blessed indeed. Every moment will give us the peace that passeth understanding, every hour will be filled with the joy everlasting, and every day will be as 1,000 years in celestial kingdoms on high. To give the world emancipation is the ruling desire of all minds that are spiritually awakened, and these should remember that to overcome evil with good is the only way. Forget the wrong that may appear in the outer world of things, and give all your thought to the great good that is inherent in all things. You thereby place in action the greatest emancipating power that the human race will ever know. We are in bondage because we have lived to please the person. Follow the soul and freedom shall come quickly. Then we shall please the person better than ever before. To follow the soul is to enter the greater domains of life, those domains from which we may secure everything that is rich and beautiful and superior in human existence. The soul leads, not only into the life more abundant, but also into the actual possession of all the spiritual riches that the greater life may contain. And when we find the kingdom that is within, all that we may desire in the without, shall be added. The soul that lives most perfectly in the present, creates most nobly for the future. Be yourself today, regardless of what happened yesterday. Be all that you are or can be today, and you will live in a fairer world tomorrow. The way to freedom. There is only one will in the universe, just as there is only one mind. The one mind is the mind of God, the one will is the will of God. The mind of individual man is an individual or differentiated expression of the infinite mind, and the largeness of this human mind depends upon how much of the one mind man may decide to appropriate. Man has the freedom to incorporate in his own individual consciousness as much of the infinite mind as he may desires, and as the mind of the infinite is limitless, the mind of man may continue to become larger and larger without any end. The will of the individual mind is a partial expression of the will of God. Just as the force of growth that is in each branch is a part of the same force that is in the vine, and the power of the individual will depend upon how perfectly the individual mind works in harmony with the infinite mind. There is no limit to the power of the will of God, the divine will. Therefore, when the human will is as large a part of the divine will as the individual mind can appropriate and apply, the human will necessarily becomes immensely strong, and since the individual mind can appropriate a larger and a larger measure of the divine will, there is no limit to the power of will that can be developed in the mind of man. To develop the true will, the first essential is to realize that there is but one will, and that we will, with the one will, just as we live the one life, and think with the one mind, though in our thinking, living and willing, we do not, as a rule, do justice to that part of the whole, which it is our privilege to use. We think, live and will too much, as isolated entities, instead of as divine beings eternally united with the Supreme. The second essential is to realize that the divine will works only for better things and greater things. The path of the divine will is upward and onward forever, and its power is employed exclusively in building more lofty mansions for the soul. Therefore the will of God does not produce sickness, adversity or death. On the contrary, the will of God eternally wills to produce wholeness, harmony and life. The ills of personal life are not produced by divine will, they are produced by man's inability to properly use that part of divine will that is being expressed in his mind. And his inability comes because man does not always apply his will in harmony with divine will. When man uses his will as his own isolated power, and separates his mind more and more from the source of his power, in consequence, the power of his will becomes weaker, and he necessarily fails to accomplish what he has in view. He also falls apart from the one ascending current of life. He gets out of harmony with the true order of things, and sickness, trouble, adversity and want invariably follow. The true use of the will is to apply the will in the full recognition of the oneness of the human will with the divine will. My will is as much of the divine will as I am using now, and it is my privilege to use as much of the divine will as I may desire. To constantly think of my will and the divine will as the same will, is to place my mind in such perfect harmony with limitless power of divine will that I can appropriate this power in larger and larger measure. And the more I appropriate, the stronger becomes the power of will in me. When the individual mind is in such perfect harmony with the Supreme Mind that the divine will can be given free and full expression, the will of the individual mind becomes invincible. The secret therefore of developing a powerful will is found here, and here alone. The true will is never domineering nor antagonistic. Neither does it ever apply the force of resistance. If you are antagonistic or have a tendency to resist everything that is not to your liking, it is proof conclusive that you are not in harmony with divine will. You are misdirecting your power, and are forming obstacles and pitfalls for yourself. The divine will does not attempt to overcome evils and obstacles with antagonistic or domineering forces. The divine will does not fight wrong. It transforms wrong. It works in silence and serenity, but goes so deeply into the elements of things that it undermines the very first causes of all adverse or detrimental conditions. It does not resist the surface, but goes calmly beneath the surface and transforms those undercurrents from which surface conditions proceed. The divine will, by going into the deeper life of all things, transforms all things into harmony with itself, and can transform all things because its power is supreme. Therefore when we are in the midst of adversity, we should not rail against fate nor antagonize those conditions that seem to work against us. We have within us the power of divine will, and this will can change everything for good. But it not only can, it will. It is not the will of God to keep any person in adversity. It is the will of God to set every person free. And every person will be set free when he places his life completely in the hands of divine will. When the individual mind can say, from the heart, thy will be done, the individual life has been placed in the power of divine will, and that life will at once begin to pass out of adversity, sickness, trouble and want, into the world of freedom. However, we do not give up our individuality when we give our mind over to divine will. We do not become automatons in the hands of some superior power. On the contrary, we open our minds to that power that alone can produce individuality. The individuality we now possess has been formed by whatever measure of divine will that we have incorporated in our own conscious existence, and by opening our minds completely to divine will, we shall gain sufficient power to make our individuality infinitely stronger and superior to what it now is. Our purpose is not to be used by the Supreme, but to use the power of the Supreme. To live the life of God, think the thought of God, and will with the will of God. That is the secret path to the highly developed individuality, and it is such an individuality that becomes a mastermind, a son of the Most High. When the individual mind declares, thy will be done, consciousness must fully recognize the presence of supreme power, and must realize, with depth of thought and feeling, that supreme power invariably leads to higher ground, the world of freedom and superior existence. When the mind gives up to divine will in an indifferent, submissive, self-surrendering attitude, it is not giving up to divine will. It is simply giving up to the surrounding forces of fate. Such a mind will permit the forces of adversity to have their way, thinking that it is the will of God that much suffering must still be endured, and will consequently drift with circumstances, accepting whatever comes as a necessary chastisement. This method, however, weakens the mind, and places the individual more out of harmony with God than ever before. We always place ourselves out of harmony with God when we accept evil as coming from Him, and we weaken our own ability to use divine will when we permit adversity to exist thinking that it was sent from God. To give the mind over to divine will is not to give up at all, in the ordinary sense of that term. We simply place ourselves in that position where we can use the power of the one true will instead of a mere imitation. We blend our own desires and aims with that power that we know can see us through, and we work in the realization that whatever is detrimental in our plans will be eliminated as we press on towards the great goal in view. The mind that is aimless, waiting for the will of God to take him where he belongs, will drift with fate. He is not in the hands of divine will. He is in the hands of circumstances because he has not given divine will something to do. God does not tell us what to do, He has given us the wisdom to know our own desires and our own tendencies, and He has given us the power to fulfill those desires, but we must take individual action. This is why we have individuality and free individual choice. However, when we do take individual action, God will work with us if we enter into harmony with Him. And when He is with us, failure is impossible. To use divine will, we must first have a lofty purpose in view. We must have something high and something definite that we wish to attain. We must have something upon which to apply the limitless power of divine will, and we must desire to reach that goal with the very deepest and strongest desires of heart and soul. Then we must will to press on, knowing that we are using divine will, the supreme will of the Most High, because this is the only will in the universe. It is the will that eternally wills the higher, the greater and the better, the will that is invincible, and always does what it wills to do. To the minds of the many the true meaning of the will of God has not been made perfectly clear. For the majority, even among those who have strong spiritual tendencies, hesitate to give up to the absolute direction of higher power. There is a slight dread in the mind of the average person whenever he thinks of entering the uncertainty and the mysteriousness of the seeming void, and as long as things are reasonably well he does not care to give up to some power he knows nothing of. And as a true understanding of higher power cannot be found among the many, there are, accordingly, but few who can actually declare, with the whole heart, "Thy will be done." We frequently pray for His will to guide us, nevertheless we inwardly expect to use our own wills in mostly everything we do. But such prayers are not true to the Spirit, and therefore they prevent the soul from actually discerning the real meaning of God's will, and also prevent the mind from becoming a perfect channel for the expression of His will. The universe is orderly from center to circumference, and everything is established upon the firm foundation of eternal right and universal good. There is a power that lives and moves throughout this vast immensity, and all those things that have a permanent place in the cosmos, or that are instrumental in any way, in promoting the purpose of life, have their source in this one power. All the laws and forces in existence spring originally from this power. It is therefore the center and source of all that lives and moves. And this power is the will of God. Accordingly, to do the will of the Father is to enter into harmony with the universal order and promote the great eternal plan. The laws of life are all expressions of supreme will. God wills eternally the right and the true, and the act of His willing originates and perpetuates the sublime plan of life that harmoniously thrills the entire cosmos during endless eternities. God's will is constant and changeless, therefore all the laws and principles in existence remain ever the same, as they are all the expression of the one will. All that we see in the life of the universe is the eternal coming forth of divine will, and the perpetual returning to the one source. The true will in every soul is an individualization of infinite will, and the true use of the individual will means the doing of the will of God. The infinite will does not seek to control things, but seeks eternally to give itself to things. And here lies the secret in correctly using the human will and in placing the human will in perfect harmony with God's will. When you can say with the whole heart, "Thy will be done," you are not giving up your own will, but you are placing your own will and the whole of your life in oneness with God and in harmony with the universal order. Therefore, when you do the will of God, your own will becomes right, and becomes infinitely stronger than it ever was before. When we act in perfect accord with the laws of life on all the planes of being, we are doing the will of God, because what we call law in life is the will of God in expression in life. He who lives in perfect harmony with nature, who fully appreciates her grandeur and her beauty, and who daily seeks to be inspired by the loveliness of her presence, is doing the will of God in the natural world. He who rightly employs all the elements of mind and body, and who furthers the purpose of his own being in constant growth and enfoldment, is doing the will of God in the human world. He who searches the deep things of God and enters into that high state, where God becomes closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, he who lives and moves and hears his being in the infinite sea of divine light, and ever ascends higher and higher into the greater glories of God's kingdom, is doing the will of God in the spiritual world. Whoever can say with his whole heart, "Thy will be done," has placed the whole of his life in perfect accord with God, and henceforth he will seek to live in perfect harmony with all that is, because all is of God. To do the will of God is not only to place one's life in the hands of God, but to be at peace with all the world, and to give one's whole life to all the world. The will of God seeks eternally to give itself to things, all things. The will of man, to be in harmony with the will of God, must do the same. However insignificant a law may seem to be, it is God working in that part of his universe, and as he is everywhere, manifesting his power everywhere, we must live and work with him in all things, even the most trivial, if we would be in perfect accord with his life and always do his will. A law in life is a path to greater things, in truth, an open door through which we may pass more closely into his presence. We can meet God at every expression of life, and whenever we are in the highest state of harmony with our expression of life, we have met God in that place. And also, when we use that expression of life in entering into a larger measure of life, we do the will of God in that place. Therefore, whoever meets God everywhere, and does his will in every place, will realize the fullness of life at all times and under every circumstance. And to realize the fullness of life is to realize the allness of the good. The incompleteness of human life, in general, is caused by our failure to enter into perfect accord with all the laws in our sphere of existence. We may be wholly right in some things while the very opposite in other things. We may be scrupulous in regard to the right use of some laws, and at the same time continually negligent in regard to others. There are many who take perfect care of their bodies, and comply most rigidly with all known physical laws, yet they violate the laws of mind, nearly every hour of their existence. Others are very careful so as to think only the truth, and do their best to remain continually in the most beautiful states of mind, but while aiming to live in mental ideals they are wholly indifferent to the welfare of the body. Not infrequently we find people who live in perfect accord with intellectual laws but violate daily the moral laws. Also, too many who are the reverse. In brief, the majority do the will of God in some realms while living entirely at variance with his laws in other realms. And here we find the simple answer to many perplexing questions. When some misfortune comes to you that you do not think you deserve, do not think that God is unjust or that fate is unkind. You have simply failed to do his will in all things. Do not blame others, do not blame fate, do not even blame yourself. Simply proceed to readjust your life so that you may become one with him in all things. Then all ills shall disappear, and you shall not only regain what you have lost but you shall, in addition, receive much more. Live in accord with all the laws of life physically, mentally and spiritually, do all things in the consciousness of God, do all things to the glory of God, and follow the light of his Spirit in every thought and deed. Then you will always do the will of God. Though you may dwell upon the mountain tops of the Spirit, though you may glory in the splendors of the cosmic realm, though your mind may go out upon the vastness of the limitless and your soul ascend to empyrean heights, still, do not for a moment deprive the body of anything that is rich and beautiful in physical existence. The great goal is the spiritual life, and in the spiritual life all the joys of sense, all the joys of intellect and all the joys of the highest heavens are divinely blended into one. The physical life is sacred. The earth is the footstool of the Most High. God lives in his heaven, but every atom in the visible universe thrills with the glory of his radiant presence. The supreme point of view. When we are upon the mountain top of life and look upon things from this lofty point of view, we discover that all is well. Wherever we may turn our vision we find the same all is well. We can see all things and yet all is well with all things. The good alone is in evidence, everything is in the likeness of God, and we conclude that everything actually is as it was originally created by God, very good. But when we descend to the valley we find many things quite different, and the problem is whether the scene on the mountain top was simply a beautiful vision, or the scene in the valley an unpleasant illusion. To the mind in the valley the life of the valley alone seems real, to the mind on the heights the beauty and glory of sublime life alone seems real, while the regions below are but the undeveloped beginnings of some better day. To decide which of these two minds is right is not necessary. We cannot know the truth by what seems to be true from a single point of view. It is results that demonstrate, therefore we must find what effect life in the valley has upon the whole of life, and what effect life on the heights has upon the whole of life. To live in the valley alone, ignoring everything that may come from lofty realms, is to live in darkness, trouble and pain. This we know. To him who secludes himself in the lower regions of existence, nothing seems to be wholly well. There is usually something wrong or defective with everything with which he may come in contact, and life at best has but little to give. How different, however, everything becomes when we begin to live on the heights. We not only find that all is well in these upper regions, but all things become well in the lower realms the moment we begin to live in the upper. We must therefore conclude that all is well when we are well, but that we are not well unless we live on the heights. We also conclude that the vision of the soul is true, that the ideal alone is real, and that man can see all things as they are only when entering sublime existence. And as all is well from the viewpoint of sublime existence, to think the truth man must always think that all is well. To live in the lower realms is to live in pain, to live in the upper realms is to live in peace, freedom and joy. Then why should we continue to live in the lower, while wholly ignoring the upper? Why should we declare that the lower alone is real, and that the upper is but a pleasant dream? Is pain more real than joy? Is bondage more real than freedom? Death more real than life? True, daily experience sometimes seems to contradict the vision of the soul, but if darkness be present now, does that prove that light is always a mere dream? When we are wholly out of harmony we cannot understand, for the time being, how there can be any harmony. All seems to be discord, but the moment we fully recognize the absoluteness of universal harmony, discord is no more. When all does not seem to be well in daily life, we may not feel that we can truthfully say that all is well. But there is a marked distinction between the outer appearance of discord and the inner reality of harmony, and it is the inner reality that we should live. When discord appears on the surface, the cause may be found in the fact that we have descended from our true place. We have tried to go away from harmony and have thus produced discord. But the moment we return to harmony, the discord disappears, and all is well. We must conclude therefore, that so long as we remain in the reality of harmony, all will be well, because all is always well in the world of harmony, and the world of harmony is the true world, the only true world, the world in which man was created to always live. And we must remember the great truth that so long as man lives in the world of harmony there can be no discord anywhere. So long as he lives in the upper regions nothing can go wrong in the lower regions. The lower states of life are but effects of what man does. And when man is on the heights he will do only that which is well, because all is always well on the heights. Therefore, since like causes produce like effects, all will be well in the valley so long as man lives on the mountain top. This being true, every person should always think that all is well, and should always live in that sublime life where all is absolutely well. Thus, that which is well, will manifest in every part of life, while that which did not seem to be well will pass away. Live in the true, and the whole of life becomes true. Whoever discerns clearly the spiritual essence or divine substance which is the basis or soul of all reality, will manifest in the form, not only purity, but absolute immunity from all disease and from all adverse actions among physical elements and forces. His body will be spiritualized in proportion to this understanding. and will establish itself more and more firmly in that state of being where divine nature reigns supremely. To spiritualize the body is to give greater strength, more perfect health and more youthful vigor, as well as higher quality, to the body. To establish the body in the consciousness of the spirit is to give the body absolute protection from weakness or disease. In the spirit we find all the elements of perfect being for body, mind and soul, and we place the body in the spirit when we realize that every atom in the body is filled, through and through, with the real substance of spirit. Make yourself a living example of the power of spirit. Do not permit a single weakness to continue for a moment. Do not say that you will be in the future, say that you are now, and you are, because you are the exact image of the Supreme. The true order of things. What the individual life is to be, as a whole, or in any of its parts, depends upon where the consciousness of being is established, and there are three distinct planes in which this consciousness may be established: the physical, the psychical and the spiritual. To establish life in the physical is to become a materialist. There will be no consciousness of the finer things of existence, and the understanding of things in general will be one-sided. In consequence, the mind cannot see anything as it really is, and will make mistakes at every turn. The materialist lives for the body alone, and depends upon the physical senses exclusively, both for knowledge and enjoyment. But the physical senses are never wholly reliable unless when employed by mental faculties that are above the physical. Therefore, the knowledge of the materialist is composed principally of illusions and half-truths, and his enjoyment is but an inferior imitation of real happiness. The life of the materialist is necessarily full of troubles and ills because he cannot be in harmony with the true principle of life so long as he is living on the surface of life instead of in real life itself. In brief, all the ills of life can be traced to materialism, in one or more of its various forms. Therefore, the materialist is not simply one who denies the existence of the soul. The materialist is anyone who lives in the body, who has established his life in physical existence, and who employs objective senses and faculties only, regardless of what he may believe about God, the soul or the future. Though a person may be thoroughly religious, as far as he knows, and may believe everything that sacred literature may say about things spiritual, if he cannot comprehend the spiritual except as it is expressed in physical acts, physical ideas, physical rites or physical symbols, he is still a materialist. He is living in the world of tangible things, and has no consciousness of that higher power that produces things. To be spiritual he must discern the spirit that is within things, back of things, above things, while his senses admire the outer symbol. His spiritual discernment must understand the interior significance of that symbol, otherwise he has not found real religion or real spirituality. The mind that has not entered into real spirituality, is living in materiality, and to live in materiality is to be in bondage to the ills of this world. Therefore true existence cannot be realized so long as life is established in the physical plane. To establish life in the psychical plane is to be guided almost entirely by feeling and emotion, but no feeling is absolutely true unless it originates in the soul, and our feelings cannot originate in the soul unless we have established life in the spiritual plane. Therefore, the person who is living in the psychical plane is living in a world of feelings, emotions, desires and sensations that are more or less abnormal. His mental world is artificial, composed principally of imaginations that are patterned after things from without instead of the understanding of absolute truth from within. The imagination is always influenced a great deal by the play of the emotions, and when the emotions are the results of external suggestions, as they always are, unless when we live in the spirit, the imagination will likewise be under the control of things, good and otherwise. This means that our thinking will be worldly, materialistic and more or less disordered, because as we imagine, so we think. Therefore, to live in the psychical world is to live in a world of abnormal feeling, and misdirected imagination, but true being cannot find its foundation in such a world. True being can be established only in the consciousness of truth, and the consciousness of truth can be gained only in the spirit. When life is established in the spiritual state, the physical ceases to be materialistic, and the psychical ceases to be a troubled sea of conflicting emotions. Instead, the physical becomes an orderly expression of the pure, wholesome life of the soul, and the psychical becomes a world of the richest thought, the most sublime feeling and the highest mental enjoyment. The spiritual state of being is the true foundation of being, because the spiritual alone has the necessary qualities. To establish life in any other state or upon any other plane is to act contrary to the true order of things, and trouble must necessarily follow. There is only one place for man to live, and that is in the soul. When he tries to live elsewhere, in mind or body, he separates himself from his great inheritance and does not receive what he has the right and the privilege to receive. When there seems to be nothing in life, the fault lies with the man himself, not with the laws of his being. Instead of living in the spirit, where he could receive everything, he has gone to live in the emptiness of the material, where there is nothing to be had, but the undesirable consequences of wrongdoing, and wrongdoing is the direct result of wronggoing. Going away from the true state of being. To live in the spiritual state is to give expression to everything that is in the spirit, because what we actually live we bring out into tangible existence, and the spirit contains everything that may be required to perfect the whole of existence, physical, mental and spiritual. The belief that the spiritual life is apart from the mental and physical is not true. It is the spiritual alone that can make the physical and the mental complete. In brief, we do not begin to enjoy the body and the mind until we begin to live in the soul. We cannot attain the most perfect physical health and the most perfect physical development until we can begin to draw upon the inexhaustible life of the spirit, nor can we attain the greatest intellectual power and the highest mental brilliancy until our minds are opened to real spiritual illumination. To have health and wholeness of body, we must have an abundance of that life that is health and wholeness, and that life comes only from the soul. To gain that life we must live in the soul, and the life that we live we invariably bring forth into mind and body. To perfect the beautiful in the physical form, we must, likewise, receive the necessary elements from the spiritual state. Beauty of form is produced by harmony in formation and soul in expression, but we can give forth neither harmony nor soul until we actually live in the soul. The true development of mind, character and life, all depend upon our ever-increasing expression of the perfect qualities of the spiritual life. Therefore the truest, the best and the greatest results from physical existence and mental existence can come only when we actually enter spiritual existence. But to enter the spiritual is not simply to provide those essentials through which we may realize the ideal in the physical and the mental. To enter the spiritual is to enter another, and a greater world, the transcendent kingdom of the soul, the sublime world of cosmic consciousness. It was into this world that Jesus entered, when his face did shine as the sun and his garment became white as the light. We can therefore imagine what is in store for those who open their eyes to its splendor and glory. Be not therefore anxious for the morrow. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. The term evil signifies incompleteness, or that which needs perfecting, development and fulfillment now. The statement therefore, means that we have sufficient to do to make the present moment full and complete, without giving any thought to what we are to be or do in the future. When the present moment is filled with the most perfect life that we can possibly realize, the seeming incompleteness of the present moment will simply become a perpetual growing process. Incompleteness will thus become a real step in growth. It will be like a growing bud, and will not be evil, only lesser good on the way to greater good. When the bud ceases to grow it decays, and becomes unwholesome, disagreeable. Likewise, when the buds in human life are checked in their growth they produce disagreeable conditions. And here is the cause of all the ills of the world. The remedy is to so live that all the power of life is centered upon the present moment. To give the whole of life to the present moment is to promote the growth of everything that exists in the life of the present moment. To live a full life now is to live more and more life now. The good that is in you, the good that is inherent in everything, is infinitely greater, and more powerful than any imperfection, or undeveloped condition that may exist in the outer world. And therefore when this good is recognized and brought out into real life, that which is not good must disappear. To apply this great truth to yourself, to others, to circumstances, is to place mind and soul in that attitude where conscious contact with the divine perfection in all things will be gained. In consequence, the good that is within will increase, while undesired conditions in the without will decrease. To recognize the greater good that is inherent in all things is to cause that good to become a greater and greater power in you, until it becomes just as strong in action as it previously was in realization. Live in the conviction that I am greater than all my ills or failures, that I am greater than all imitations of my circumstances, and greater than any condition that I can possibly meet. When you feel that you are greater than your ills, those ills cannot long remain, because what you inwardly feel, you realize, and what you realize, you bring forth into living expression. To open the mind to the great thought that the health that is within you is greater than any disease than you can ever know, is to open your life to the power of that health. And when the greater power of the health that is within you comes forth into the life of every atom in your being, the lesser power of disease, weakness or adverseness must vanish completely. No disease can long remain in your system after you begin to live in the constant conviction that the absolute health that is within you is infinitely greater and more powerful than all the sickness in the world. Nor can failure continue after you begin to realize that you, in the reality of your whole being, have the power to turn the tide of any circumstance that may ever appear in your world. The good that is within you is larger and more powerful than all the troubles, misfortunes or disappointments in existence, and this good, when fully recognized by you, will begin to work for you. It will work for your good, and will turn to good account everything that can happen. When you know that you are greater than any undeveloped condition that may exist in mind or body, you gain the power to transcend limitations. Your consciousness begins to break bounds, and you find yourself in that larger, richer mental world that you so long have desired to reach. You are placed in touch with the universal and begin to draw upon the limitless for wisdom and power and joy. You no longer feel cramped, but realize that you are absolutely free to live the largest, the best and the most beautiful life that you can possibly picture. The ideals that you discover during the highest flights of mind and soul are no longer considered impossibilities. You know that you can realize them all. To you there is no failure because the good that is within you is greater than all failure. You are above limitations, you are master of limitations, and have the power to transform every undeveloped condition into the highest form of completeness and superior worth. The lesser is passing away, and the greater is being realized in an ever-increasing measure. The good that is inherent in others is infinitely greater than all their faults, shortcomings or imperfections. Therefore we can readily forgive them for all these. There is more in man than the undeveloped surface, and it is this more that we will recognize, love and admire. When something goes wrong we will not criticize or complain. We cannot criticize anyone without harming everybody concerned, ourselves included, nor can we think well of anyone without helping everybody concerned, ourselves included. And everybody wants the best to happen to everybody. To live in constant recognition of the weaker side of human nature is to open the mind to weakness, discord, failure and unhappiness. We steadily grow into the likeness of that which we think of the most. But to live in constant spiritual touch with the great good that exists in everybody, is to open the mind to strength and happiness that cannot be measured. The most beautiful moments in life are realized when we feel that we are one with God and one with that something in man that is created in the image of God. And these moments may become eternal. Whatever we may meet in life we should always remember that the good within all things is far greater than anything that may appear on the surface, and that this greater good will finally rule the day. When this good is to reign supremely in our world will depend upon us and us alone. The superior within us is always ready and will come forth into tangible expression whenever we are ready to receive it. But we are not ready until we give the greater good in all things the first thought, no matter what the circumstances may be. Whatever may come, meet it all with the thought that the good within is greater still. The good that is inherent in all things is always greater and more powerful. The greatest things in the without are insignificant in comparison. Therefore, we can readily understand how easily the circumstances and conditions in the external world could be changed for the better, provided the all-powerful good within us was called forth into tangible action. And now we smooth the pathway of life when we realize that there is a greater good in everything we meet. How kindly we feel towards all persons and all events. Nothing seems adverse anymore, and what we previously looked upon as obstacles are now stepping stones in attainment. By recognizing the greater good in all things, we open our minds to the wisdom and the power that is contained in this greater good, and, in consequence, we are inspired by every circumstance and enriched by every experience. We gain something from everything we pass through, and every event, however adverse, simply tends to arouse more and more of the real greatness within. Even evil, in all of its forms, becomes a lifting power in our world, because we are in constant touch with the great good that is back of and above all evil. We are not crushed by the ills and the wrongs that may exist about us, but instead we are inspired to greater thoughts, greater deeds and a greater life. All things serve us, because we have found that greater good in all things that is ever waiting to serve. We have become friendly with the best that is in the world, and the best is becoming friendly with us in return. The great and good are many, but he who loves with such a love that with his love some other soul has scaled the heights and there beheld what life eternal holds in store for man, has wrought the noblest of them all. Then give me such a love in boundless measure. Give me the love of some inspired soul whose living presence, fair and strong, can spur me on, and on to greater heights than human life has ever reached before. Some pure and tender heart who knows the sacred longings of that life supreme, within that must ascend, and evermore ascend. Some fair illumined soul, whose spirit dwells within the vision of transcendent realms on high, and knows that I am made for such a place. Then life shall be a life indeed to me, my sacred longings all shall be fulfilled, and every good that I can wish for shall be mine, for all the joys of earth and all of heaven's ecstasies sublime, abide forevermore in such a love. Give your best to the world. We have looked far and wide for remedies, but in search we have overlooked one of the greatest of all, and that is love. Not the love of the person, not mere sentiment or emotion, but that strong, spiritual feeling that makes every atom in your being thrill with the purest sympathy and the highest kindness, and that makes you feel that every creature in existence deserves your most tender care and attention. When everything goes wrong with us, we blame fate, environment or the world. We forget that the world does to us what we have done to the world. When we blame the world for everything, the world will so act that it will be to blame. But when we love the entire world with the whole heart, the world will change toward us accordingly and be kind. When you do not succeed, when no one seems to care for your service, or for your talents, there are two things to do: do your best and love much. Do not condemn the race because it is slow to appreciate your worth. When you do this you push the world further away from yourself, and its appreciation will decrease instead of increase. Love the world, the whole world, and love with all the power of heart and soul. This will bring the world nearer to you. You will enter into friendly relationship with the world. The race will thereby discover what you have to give and will come at once to receive your talent. True achievement in any sphere of action depends upon real ability, and a strong, deep, whole-souled love. Your ability can be cultivated, and we can all learn to love much. Therefore the future of any person may become far greater and more beautiful than the present. When others speak wrongly against you, do not permit the slightest trace of ill feeling. Anger and indignation not only weakens your own system, but also cause you to attract disagreeable people and adverse conditions. Love those who have mistreated you. Love them with the very deepest power of your soul, and they will soon come to you to make everything right again. Love can change the worst hatred into the deepest love, and what is more, when you love everybody you attract only the best people and the best conditions. Love much, and lovely souls will daily come into your life, and those people who are not as lovely as they might be, will become better because they have met you and felt the divine fires aflame in your soul. When people are going wrong, just love them, not with the person, nor in a weak, sentimental sense, but with that strong, soul love that comes from the very heart of the infinite. Such love will lift anybody, and whoever is lifted up into the better becomes better. When we ascend in the scale of life, we enter the truer and the higher, we enter the right, and thereby become true and right. When you have reason to think that others are trying to take advantage of you, have no fear. Do not condemn, do not think of the wrong they are planning to do, take God with you and love them, love as you never loved before, and the wrong they are holding against you will change and become a great power for your good instead. Love can change any condition or circumstance, and every change that comes through love is a change for the better. Love brings us into right relations with all persons and all things. Love removes inharmony, perverted feelings, obstacles, barriers and all kinds of unnatural conditions, and produces that perfect oneness through which the beautiful life can come forth. He who has placed himself in oneness with man can easily find his unity with God, but no one can find God who does not love man. When we love the whole race with the whole heart, then we shall enter the presence of him who is love. It is the truth that he is nearest to God who is nearest to man, and the nearer we are to God, the more life and power we receive from above. In consequence, the more we can accomplish in the world, and the better off will the world be, because we came here to live for a while. To be at peace with everything is one of the greatest secrets to greatness, usefulness and high spiritual attainment, and he alone can find the peace that passeth understanding, who loves everybody and loves much. But true spiritual love does not love because it expects to gain thereby. When we love in the spirit of gain, our love is only material emotion, and does not come from the spiritual depths of the soul. Pure soul love, loves because it is love, and must love. It loves because it is its very life to love, and could not cease loving without ceasing to be. And it cannot cease to be because the love that is love is eternal love. Therefore to awaken the love of the soul is to place in action one of the highest powers in the universe, a power that can do so much because it is so much. To feel the interior presence of this love, with its high, strong, invincible power, perfectly blended with the sweetest tenderness, not only produces a joy that cannot be measured but also lifts you into a universe that is fairer by far than we ever imagined heaven to be. And truly it is heaven we enter when we love with such a love, when we love as God loves. Pure love sees no evil, no sin, no wrong, it does not live in the world of illusion or darkness. It is a child of the light and radiates its spiritual glory wherever it may be. Where love is, there will the light be also, and neither darkness, sickness nor sin can exist in the light. There is nothing that will not be blessed by the presence of love, and the soul that loves with the spirit, that loves much and loves always, will meet the good alone. He has given his best to the world, and the world will open its heart to him and be kind. As the years pass by, the world will lavish upon him the richest treasures within its power to give, and nothing will be too good to place at his door. Blessings of all kinds from every direction will come in greater and greater abundance, and his life will be full with the best that God and man can give, because he has given his best to the world, and loved much. The practical mind may think that this is only sentiment, and therefore has no value, neither for the physical life nor for the spiritual life. But too often the practical mind looks for his treasure in the realm of effect instead of in the realm of cause. In consequence, he finds but little of real value anywhere in life. The great things in life do not come through minds that dwell merely on the surface, that cannot rise above the world of tangible results. Everything that is beautiful and of real worth, whether it appeals to the eye, the ear, the intellect or the soul, has come through the mind that had visions. The mind that could soar to supreme heights, and behold the real splendor and glory of the world. To be practical is well and necessary, but there is something else that comes first. This something else brings forth the substance, the material upon which practical efforts may be applied. Therefore, the practical mind cannot act until the dreamer has had his vision. The higher nature of man must act before the external mind can find anything of value to do. The soul must live and think before the person can attain and achieve, and the greater the love, the greater the life and the thought of the soul. Whatever has added to the welfare of man in any age has been the product of the mind with the vision. All the good things of life have come from the world of visions and dreams. Someone entered the finer realms of life for a moment and brought back treasures. The practical mind turned it to use, and the world was richer and better than it was before. This being true, it is the very height of wisdom to train ourselves to enter consciously and frequently into those finer realms and thus bring forth more of its hidden treasures. It is the best we all seek, and since the best comes from the ideal world, the better we understand the ideal, the richer and greater life will become. To be practical in the largest sense of that term is to so live that we can touch the sublime on the one hand and turn every ideal into a living reality on the other. The great mind is the dreamer, the prophet, the soul with visions, the mind that can soar to empyrean heights, and reveal to the race some higher truth, some better way, and thereby elevate the whole of mankind. This is the mind that brings real values to the world, that makes life worthwhile, and one of his principal secrets is love. When we love in this supreme, spiritual sense, we give a power to our practical efforts that we never gave before. We give life to our work. We do more and better work, results double and more. We do this through a power that many ignore as mere useless sentiment, and we thus demonstrate that love, the deep, strong, soul love, is as practical as any tangible force in the world. There is nothing to lose but failure, and everything to gain, when we learn to love in this strong, high, universal sense. To begin, love as much as you can, be directly interested in the highest welfare of everybody, feel in the depths of the soul that we are all working together for the greatest good to all the race, and make this feeling so strong that it thrills every fiber in your being. But do not love for effect, love because you feel love, and train yourself to feel love by loving with all the power of love, and in the highest, purest sense. He who tries to ascend will go up, he who tries to become strong will enter power, and he who tries to love everybody with the deepest, highest, strongest love of the soul will daily enter more and more deeply into the very spirit of that love that is love. And when you are awakened in the world of true spiritual love, real love takes possession of all your feelings and desires, and all your love will eternally love because it is love. From that moment you will constantly receive love from all the world and constantly give love to all the world. You will gain possession of one of the highest and one of the greatest powers in the universe, and the infinite will always be with you. God is with every soul that loves much, because it is love, the deep, pure, spiritual love that gives man the power to know that my Father and I are one. When there is anything you truly wish for, do not stand passively hoping that something may happen to make your wish come true. Go out and make that wish come true. Have the faith that you can. Believe in the power that God has given you, and God will give you more. Know that all the good in the universe lies in the path of him who has faith, and who will use the power of faith to make his own faith come true. He who only hopes, will see visions of good things, but will never reach them. But he who transforms his hope into faith and his faith into living works, will reach every lofty goal he has in view. To him nothing shall be impossible, for God is with him, giving much, and receiving much. When you have attained or received something of exceptional worth, give God the glory. Do not praise yourself, or give your own personality the credit. All power comes from above, and the more we appreciate the source of this power, the more we shall receive. The path to perpetual increase is to give God the glory for everything that comes. And when we realize that everything comes from God, everything that comes to us will have exceptional worth. Every moment will be a demonstration of the power of truth, every experience will be an open door to a larger, more beautiful world, and every person, thing or event that we may meet, will add to our welfare and joy. With God all things are possible. And when we give him the glory for everything, we are with him in everything. To live the life of the great eternal now, in the consciousness of those spiritual elements in which the real man lives and moves and is his being, is to enter the new heaven and the new earth. In the spirit all things are forever new, and the life of the spirit is perpetual, ascension into the newer, the larger, the more beautiful, the more sublime. When life seems barren and useless, we are not in the spirit. But the moment we enter the spirit, a million universes are revealed to mind, and the joy of existence becomes supreme. We are not required to search the world of things for happiness, worth, entertainment or events of interest. One moment in the spirit is far more interesting than a whole life of physical existence, and 1 hour in the cosmic world is 1,000 ages of unbounded bliss. Depend upon the infinite and his power will see you through. We learn that the Lord fought for Israel in ages gone by, and he will do the same now, for he never changes. The term Israel means one chosen of God, and every person who chooses to go with God will be chosen of God. Go with God, live with God, walk with God, depend upon God in all things, and you will be chosen of God. When you choose God as your leader and your king, he will fight your battles, he will be with you always, and you will never see anything but victory. We fail only when we depend upon ourselves, ignoring the presence and the goodness of the Supreme. We go wrong only when we follow the light of our own darkness, forgetting that the guiding light of the Most High is at hand. This light knows what we ought to do, and when we follow this light we will always do that which is best. The light of the Spirit never leads into sickness, trouble or want. The light of the Spirit invariably leads out of that which is evil, and into that which is good. To go with God is to go into freedom, into happiness and into everything that can add to the richness and beauty of life. God is rich and can give us everything we may need without depriving anyone of anything, and when God leads us on to victory no one will lose because we have gained. The best will happen to everybody, and the greatest good will come to all. The gain of one is the gain of the many, providing that gain was secured through higher power, and when the one ascends in the scale, millions will discover the light they so long have desired to see. This is our purpose, to live the purest, the largest, the fairest, the most useful, the most beautiful and the most spiritual life possible, just for today. To be our very best here and now, with no desire to outshine some other being, but simply to be all that we are in divine being now. To fill the present moment with all the spiritual sunshine that we can possibly radiate through the crystal walls of love, peace, faith and joy, and to live so near to the Supreme that we may touch the hem of his garment whenever we so desire. This is life, and he who lives with such a purpose forever in view, shall never know an undesired moment. To believe in the Christ is to enter into the Christ consciousness, not simply to believe something about what he was, but to realize what he is, to feel the sublime life that he felt, and to know the touch of the Spirit that he knew. We believe in the Christ only when we can mentally feel the power of his life in our own divine nature, and we believe in his name, the name that is above all names, when we can inwardly discern the full spiritual significance of that name. Belief in the Christ is not of the letter, but of the Spirit, not to be definitely expressed in words, but to be inwardly felt in the soul. To ask in the name of the Christ is to enter into the spiritual understanding of that name, into the very soul of the power of that name, and in that sublime state offer our prayer. When we enter into that realization where we know what the name of Christ signifies in the Spirit, we can ask in his name, and what we ask in his name we invariably receive. When we enter into the spirit of the name of the Christ we are in the supreme power of the Christ, we inwardly know what the Christ is and what he can do, and being in his power, we are in that power that can do and will do whatever we wish to have done. We fail to receive only when we are outside of that power that can give, but we invariably enter into the power of the Christ when we inwardly know the spiritual meaning of his name. To end a prayer by simply saying, "We ask it in Christ's name" is not sufficient. We ask in his name only when we can consciously feel that divinity that is defined by the name of the Christ. Words have no power unless they are spoken in the feeling of the Spirit of that truth that the words are intended to convey. We speak to God only when we spiritually discern and inwardly feel what we say, and God answers only those prayers that are spoken to him. We should never try to eliminate evil. To resist evil, to give thought to evil, or to work against evil, is to give more life and power to the very thing you wish to remove. Overcome evil with good, but do not array the good against the evil, thinking that overcoming implies resistance or warfare. To overcome is to rise out of, forgetting the lesser, by giving the whole of life to the greater. The purpose of life is to grow eternally into the greater good. Aim to fulfill this purpose and evil of every description will disappear. There is no wrong in the world that demands our attention. The good alone deserves our attention, and when the good receives all our attention, evil cannot exist anymore. Build for the right, inspire every soul with an irresistible desire for the right, and everything you do will add to the power that makes for freedom. Think of the good, speak of the good, work for the good, live for the good, and the good only, and your life will be a light wherein darkness can never be. The false prophet always predicts evil, trouble, misfortune and death. He can see only the weak side, the man-made, the coming and going illusions. The true prophet can see that which lies behind the illusion, that which is possible, that which is in store, that which can be done and will be done. He keeps the eye single upon the high state, and thereby ascends into the reality of that vision which previously seemed but a dream. Every person who judges according to appearances is a false prophet. He forms conclusions that are not true to real life, and by following those conclusions causes that which is false and undesirable to come to pass. Every person who judges according to the divinity that is inherent in man is a true prophet. He brings truth into expression and thereby causes that which is true to prevail in tangible existence. The true prophet can see the greatness, the beauty and the perfection of the soul of man, and knowing that the soul is the master, predicts the coming of everything that is in the soul, or that the soul has the power to do, and all such predictions will come true. God is sufficient. When you are in sickness, trouble, sorrow or want, depend upon the Supreme. You need nothing else. Infinite power is greater than all power, and if you have perfect faith, this power will surely set you free, no matter what the condition of bondage may be. The ills of the world continue principally because we think that something else besides the infinite is required. But to depend upon other things besides the one is idol worship. The true worship of God, the highest worship of God, is to live so near to God that we can, at all times, feel that power that can do everything, will do everything, is doing everything. When we worship God, in spirit and in truth, we do not seek help from things. We use things according to their nature, but we seek help from the Supreme alone. There is no bondage in living according to the law. In brief, there is freedom only in that life that lives absolutely according to the law. The law is but a path to new realms, fairer than we have ever known before. To follow any law in life is to increase the greatness and the worth of life, and to follow all the laws of life is to grow perpetually into the highest good that body, mind and soul can possibly desire. And no one could wish for a greater freedom than this. To use the law is to gain our own. To misuse or ignore the law is to deprive ourselves of our own, and bring disorder, want and pain into life instead. The law never binds nor holds down. The power of all law moves eternally towards the heights, that supreme greatness that is waiting for man, and whoever follows the law will move with that power up unto those same heights. Give God the glory for what you have and you will receive more. Be grateful for the measure that is coming to you, and that measure will increase perpetually. This is the law, and it will never fail unless you fail to do to others what God is doing to you. Giving and receiving must be equal in your life. We must give something for everything we receive. Nothing is free. The universe is not built in that manner. But giving does not imply the gift of things. True giving and true being are one and the same in real life. The act of giving produces just as much joy as the act of receiving, because both add to the richness of existence. When we give much we bring forth much from the depths of divine being, and what we bring forth becomes a permanent part of actual life. When we give much we add to life from the within. When we receive much we add to life from the without. And when the richness of the within is harmoniously blended with the richness of the without, then real living begins. But the two must be equal. When we give more than we receive, or receive more than we give, discord follows, and herein we find the cause of many troubles and ills. The lesser without cannot receive the greater within, nor can the greater without be appropriated and appreciated by the lesser within. The small, undeveloped mind cannot enjoy the sublime grandeur of nature, nor can the great, highly developed mind find contentment in crude, uncultivated surroundings. The without and the within must be in harmony if the highest happiness and the truest life is to be enjoyed, and this harmony is invariably secured when giving and receiving are equal. In truth, there is no other way, if we would have the real correspond with the ideal, and the capacity to enjoy, be as large as the good things we have found to enjoy. We must give as much as we receive, and receive as much as we give. Before we can receive those things in the without that have worth, we must bring forth worth from the within. What we bring forth from the within we always give to the world, because no person can enrich his own spiritual life without enriching the whole world thereby. Before we can receive the best of all things in the without, we must bring forth the best of all things from the within. But to desire to give to the world from the richness of our own nature is not sufficient. Many have done this and have found themselves in want, both physical and spiritual. To desire to receive is just as necessary as to desire to give. The two desires should be equally strong, and together should hourly grow in strength. The desire to receive is just as good as the desire to give, providing the two desires are equally dear to the heart. The more we receive the more we can give, and the more we give the greater our capacity to receive. Therefore, by placing ourselves in that position where we can constantly give more and constantly receive more and more, we not only add more and more to the richness and beauty and perfection of our own life, but we become a great power for good in the world. And this is our highest aim. Before we can live a great life and receive from the external world those things that naturally belong to a great life, we must give forth into real life more and more of our own inherent greatness. Before we can receive as much from the world of things as our largest personal needs and desires may demand, we must unfold, develop and use those powers and talents that are necessary to the building of greater and greater things. Be of great use in the world and you give more and more to the world. In response the world will bring your own to you. He who actively is much, gives much, and he gives the most who serves the best. To serve the human race in the largest and highest sense, we must bring forth into living expression the truest, the best and the greatest that we can possibly find in the depths of our own sublime being. And to this end we need all the inspiration we can receive from nature, all the love and friendship we can receive from man, and all the wisdom and power we can receive from God. To become all that we are destined to become, we must receive the largest possible measure from every source. But we cannot receive the largest possible measure from any source unless we give all we have the power to give whenever we have the privilege to do so, and this privilege is ever present. Whatever our field of action may be, we may give the very best that there is within us, and we will not do so in vain. Live a great life where you are, hide nothing that is worth, use every talent in full measure, bring forth into life and usefulness the highest powers that you know you possess, and you will enter into a greater and greater life, until you finally reach the supreme heights of exalted spiritual attainments. Awaken everything within you that can, in any manner, enrich, beautify and perfect the whole of life. Do not limit the giving of your greatest self to any one part or any one group of parts. Live for the universe and all that the vastness of the cosmos may contain. The more we all give to the whole of life, the more we all shall receive from the whole of life. We therefore have everything to gain by giving more and more everywhere, and by receiving more and more from every source in order that they may give again in still greater measure. And herein we find the secret to that beautiful life that God has prepared for them that love Him. Be not anxious for your life. Live your life according to the very highest light that is within you. Use fully and well all the potters that you have received, give your best to the world at all times and under every circumstance, and depend upon the infinite for everything that existence may need or desire. You will receive it. You need not be anxious about anything. God is greater than anything that can possibly happen. Have faith in Him and He will see you safely through. Things go wrong only when you fail to be your best and fail to take God with you in everything you do. It is therefore in your power to place yourself in that position where everything will go right. The lilies of the field are all that beautiful lilies can possibly be, and they depend wholly upon the powers divine that are within them. Accordingly, they are an inspiration to all the world. But seek ye first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. The kingdom of God is within, and manifests through man as the spiritual life. His righteousness is the right use of all that is contained in the elements of the spiritual life. The spiritual life being the complete life, the full expression of life in body, mind and soul. It is evident that the right use of the spiritual life will produce and bring everything that man may need or desire. The source of everything has the power to produce everything, providing the power within that source is used according to exact spiritual law. The spiritual life being the source of all that is necessary to a full and perfect life, and the kingdom of God within being the source of the spiritual life, we can readily understand why the kingdom should be sought first, and also, why everything that we may require will be added when the first thought is given to spiritual living and righteous action. Righteous action, however, is not simply moral action, but the right use of the elements of life in all action. To seek his kingdom first, it is not necessary to withdraw from the world, nor to deny oneself the good things that exist in the world. To seek the kingdom first, is to give one's strongest thought to the spiritual life, and to make spiritual thought the predominating thought in everything that one may do in life. In other words, go to God first for everything. Place your greatest dependence upon His power to carry you through everything, and live so close to His kingdom within that you are fully conscious of that kingdom every moment. To seek the kingdom first, the heart must be in the spirit, that is, to live the spiritual life, must be the predominating desire, but the mental conception of the spiritual life must not be narrow. In brief, that conception must contain the perfection of everything that can possibly appear in life. To think of the spiritual life as being distinct from mind and body is to deter the spiritual life from being expressed in mind and body, but what is not expressed is not lived. To think about the spiritual, or to feel the emotional power of the spiritual is not sufficient, but that is as far as the spiritual life has been taken by the average person. That the other things were not added is therefore no fault of the law. The spiritual life must be thoroughly lived in mind and body. The power of the Spirit must be made the soul of all power, and the law of spiritual action must be made the rule and guide in all action. When the spiritual is lived in all life, the richness, the quality and the worth of the spiritual will be produced in all life, and spiritual worth is the sum total of all worth. To enter the kingdom within is to enter health, harmony and happiness, because these three great principles reign supremely in the spiritual life of man. Therefore, by seeking the kingdom, health will be added, harmony will be added, happiness will be added. It is impossible to be sick in the spiritual life, and discord and unhappiness can no more exist in such a life than darkness can exist in the most brilliant light. But to seek the kingdom is not sufficient, we must also seek His righteousness. If we misuse any organ, faculty, function or power anywhere in body, mind or soul, we cannot remain in health no matter how spiritual we may try to be. To seek His righteousness is to use everything in our world as God uses everything in His world, which means, in harmony with its own nature, in harmony with its sphere of action and in harmony with the law that tends upward and onward forever. Righteous action is that action that is always harmonious, and that always works for better things, greater things, higher things. To enter the kingdom within is to enter more power, because there is no limit to the power of the Spirit, and the more power we enter into the consciousness of the Spirit, the more power we will give to mind and body. In consequence, the more spiritual we become, the stronger we become, the more able we become, the more competent we become, and the more we can accomplish whatever our work may be. And he who can do good work in the world invariably receives the good things in the world. To his life will be added all those things that can make personal existence rich and beautiful. To enter the kingdom is to enter the life of freedom. There is no bondage in the Spirit, and as we grow in the Spirit we grow out of all bondage. One adverse condition after another disappears until absolute freedom is gained. All bondage comes from incompleteness in living, and misuse of life in doing. But the spiritual life is full and complete, and it follows the law of righteous action in all doing. Therefore, when we seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, perfect freedom in all things and at all times will invariably be added. When we seek first the kingdom, All other things are not added in some mysterious manner, nor do they come of themselves regardless of our conscious effort to work in harmony with the law of life, that is, the law of being and doing all that lies within the power of life. We receive from the kingdom only what we are prepared to use in the living of a great life, and in the doing of great and noble things in the world. We receive only in proportion to what we give, and it is only as we work well that we produce results. But by entering the spiritual life we receive as much as we may require in order to give as much as we desire, and we gain the power to do everything that is necessary to give worth and superiority to our present state of existence. When we enter the spiritual life we gain every quality that is required in making life full and complete in our own state of being, and we gain the power to produce and create in the external world whatever we may need or desire. In other words, we receive everything we want from the within, and we gain the power to produce everything we want in the without. We therefore need never take anxious thought about these other things. By seeking first His kingdom and His righteousness, we shall positively receive them. The way will be opened, and we shall be abundantly supplied with the best that life can give. Depend upon me. I will provide. This is the word, eternally spoken from on high, and every awakened soul has learned the message, but the few alone have discerned its real interpretation. God is rich, and nothing is too good for the children of God. The Spirit of the Infinite will provide, not bare necessities, but everything. Ask what thou wilt and I will answer thee. It is the will of God that we should seek everything that is good, worthy and beautiful. The life of man should be full and complete, human existence should be rich in body, mind and soul. For this is the great divine purpose. To think that we must live on bare necessities in order to be spiritual, is to limit our faith in the goodness and the power of God. The kingdom of God is at hand now, we are expected to enter now, and this kingdom is abundantly supplied with everything that can enrich, perfect and beautify human life. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all other things shall be added, not simply enough to live on, but all things. The love of God is infinite, and we cannot think of infinite love as wanting to give less than all. God has the power to give all. He also has the desire to give all, and therefore every soul may, at any time, receive all that present development can take possession of. The more we ask of God the more we please God. To give is the highest pleasure of true love, and God is true love. To ask Him for everything, the most of everything and the best of everything is to enter into the life of the highest joy of heaven. And to live in such a life is to live indeed. When we do not have what we want or what we need, we should remember that Spirit can provide, and that Spirit will provide if we only so desire. Depend upon me. I will not forsake thee nor leave thee. I am thy Redeemer, I will care for thee. Take God at His word. Have faith in the message that comes from on high. Believe with all the power of mind and soul that God will do what love will do. Because God is love. Open the heart to the influx of infinite love, and all that God can give will come with His love. Do not hesitate to ask God for material things. God owns the universe. Everything is the product of His creative power, therefore it is all good, and what is good for man. What you can use to promote the welfare of everybody, including yourself, you may receive. Only remember this, that things spiritual must come first in your thought. You may have abundances of things material, there is more than enough to provide everybody with all the luxuries of life. You will not deprive anybody of anything by accepting from God all that His love can give. Others may receive as much from the same source, but seek first the things of the Spirit, for this is the law. Consider the lilies of the field. Why should not you be arrayed like one of these? It is the will of God that you should be, and you will give Him great pleasure by asking Him to clothe you even more gorgeously than they. But we must remember that we are not to take these things from others, we are to receive them from God. There is a great difference between the two methods, and there are few in the world that can see it. To receive from God we must love the spiritual the best, though we must neither despise nor ignore the material. All is from God, and all will minister to the joy and beauty of life when used in harmony with a life that is lived in God. When we live in God, all things will be turned to good account, and when we work with God, all things will work together for greater good. The world tries to get from man, the perfect way is to receive from God. and the moment we adopt the latter method, the way will be opened. Spirit will lead, we will know at each step what we are to do, and what step to take next will always be clear. Live close to God and have faith, no matter what may come or not, depend upon the Spirit to lead, and provide, and you will always do what is best. However, we must never think that it is best for anyone to live in poverty, trouble and pain. No, this is never best, not even for a moment. The Infinite can provide something better here and now, and it is His will and good pleasure to do so. When days of darkness are at hand, cling to the great truth, Spirit will provide. Think of it constantly, live in the very soul of its presence. Believe in it from the very depths of the heart. Things will take a turn. The door of opportunity will open. The desired change will come. There is nothing in the world that the Spirit cannot change for the better, therefore we may with perfect faith ask for any change desired. The best is intended for all of us. God is ever ready to give everything. Ask what thou wilt and I will answer thee. To think of thee and feel thy presence near, to rise above the world of doubt and fear, to enter where the many mansions be, to hold communion face to face with thee, to find the secret place where all is still, to feel thy joy and life my being thrill, to know that health and wholeness now are mine, to see thy light within forever shine, to feel the peace that passeth thought and speech, to know that I the endless heights shall reach, that I thy son forevermore shall be. These are the sweetest thoughts of life to me. When life is worth living, to establish permanently the living of life in the spiritual state of being is the greatest need of man. But this is not possible so long as we live in that conception of spirituality that forgets the body. The body is the temple of the Spirit, and must therefore receive just as much thought and attention as we give to the Spirit. To neglect the body is to make real spirituality impossible, because real spirituality is a living thing, and must have a highly developed personality through which this living may be expressed. Spirituality is not simply in thought, feeling or abstract contemplation. There is no spirituality without the actual coming forth of real soul life, but the life of the soul does not come forth into tangible personal living unless the body is trained to respond to that life. The spirituality that we seek is that full expression of the soul that fills every atom in the body and gives the sublime wholeness of divinity to the entire being of man. To be spiritual is to be complete in body, mind and soul, to live the fullness of real life in every element of life, and to bring forth the truest, the best and the most beautiful that exists within us. To become spiritual is to refine everything, perfect everything, beautify everything, and make the ideal real, not only in thought but in every part of physical life, mental life and spiritual life. To grow in spirituality is to continue perpetually to spiritualize the body, as well as mind and soul, until the visible man is as pure, as strong, as wholesome and as beautiful as the highest state of divine existence. True spirituality will give health and vigor to the body, power and brilliancy to the mind, strength and perfection to the character, and sublime loveliness to the soul. The more spiritual you become, the more beautiful you become in person, the more refined you become in all the elements of your nature, the more powerful you become in every thought and action, and the more comfort, happiness and real satisfaction you will receive from everything you may do in life. When spirituality is highly developed, you live constantly on the heights. You see all things as they are in the real. You know that you are created in the image and likeness of God. You are in constant touch with the beauty and splendor of the cosmic world, and your joy is supreme. You are living in the light of the Spirit, and your mind at times is so illumined by that light that your understanding of higher wisdom becomes extraordinary. You thus enter those lofty realms from which all true prophets have received their inspiration, and, accordingly, you become one of those who are chosen to be taught of God. To enter real spirituality is to anchor the mind in that very power that holds and guides the universe, and such a mind is always safe. Such a mind will not go wrong, and even though it be strongly tempted, it will be removed from danger before it is too late. There is something in the higher world about us that can and does protect the soul, and those who are fixed on high in the Spirit are ever in the care of this divine protection. Dangers, calamities or catastrophes will never touch them. They are invariably taken out safely, no matter what may happen, they are ever in the hands of God, and all is always well. This higher guiding power, however, does not simply protect the chosen ones from that which is not desired, but those who have supreme faith in the Spirit will be led on and on into the larger and larger realization of that which is desired. The Spirit contains all, and to grow in the Spirit is to receive all. Not simply that all that satisfies the demands of the intellect or the feelings of the soul, but that all that fully supplies every want, desire or need of the whole man. Spirituality is the highest good of all life realized in full living expression. In the spiritual life there is no need, neither is there any false desire. Every desire is true to the great purpose of eternal life, and every desire is fulfilled. In spiritual life every prayer is inspired by the wisdom of the Spirit, and such prayers are always answered. Whatever God may lead us to do, He will always give us the power to do. The spiritual state of being is the great foundation of all being, and the source of everything that comes forth into perfect being. Therefore, the more deeply we enter into the life and the power of the Spirit, the more fully conscious we become of those greater things that real life has in store. And whatever we become conscious of we invariably bring forth into tangible existence. The spiritual life contains real life, real power, real wisdom, real love, real harmony, real health, real purity, real peace, real joy, and to develop spirituality is to realize more and more of the real of these things until the perfection of divine being is unfolded and lived in the present personal form. In consequence, when we are in the spiritual life we need sacrifice nothing that has real value, while we gain more and more of everything that has greater value. When we begin to live the spiritual life we begin to feel that we are now upon the solid rock of eternal being, and we feel absolutely secure. We realize that we are in safety, in divinity, in the protecting care of higher power. We are becoming more and more conscious of the cosmic atmosphere, and this gives added assurance of complete protection. Because this higher, sublimated atmosphere is so surcharged with living spirit that no ill from the world can possibly pass through. We are absolutely out of the ills of the world when we are in the Spirit, just as we are absolutely out of darkness when we are in the light. And to grow in the Spirit, the first essential is to take what spiritual life we can now understand and give that full life, living expression in every atom of body, soul and mind. There can be no real spirituality developed so long as we try to make such developments a matter of the soul alone. Mind and body must be included, or our efforts simply result in feelings and sentiments that are neither wholesome nor harmless. Spirituality is not a matter of sentiment, nor is it wholly concerned with a future state of existence. Spirituality is a full life just for today. It is a life that is all that it is now. And those who are in the Spirit know that the time that now is eternal. One touch of the Spirit and all is well. Darkness and pain will vanish, sickness and sorrow take flight, weakness and bondage will pass away, and troubles can exist no more. To be touched by the Spirit is to be filled through and through with the Spirit, and where the Spirit is there evil is not. What we have seen in our visions shall come to remain. What is revealed from on high shall come and abide with us always. Therefore let the soul dream on, disturb not the peace of those sweet celestial slumbers, for what to us may appear to be spiritual sleep is but life in a greater world. And thus something from above comes to tell us, dream on, fair soul, dream on. To worship God in spirit and in truth, is to so live that we can always feel that He is with us no matter what we may think or say or do. To worship God is to take Him with us in everything, ask Him for everything, have faith that He will give us everything, and be grateful to Him because we inwardly know that we are receiving everything. To worship is not to believe and adore, but to live and love, not simply to accept the truth but to make the truth the living soul of every thought and word and deed. When we worship God in truth, we enter into His presence knowing that He is divine perfection and that we are created in His image and likeness. To believe that we are depraved beings, base sinners or imperfect human creatures, is not to be in the truth, because to be in the truth we are as God is. Therefore, while we have those beliefs we cannot worship God in truth. To worship God in truth we must enter the truth, And to enter the truth is to know that man is even now the perfect image of the Most High. To worship God in the Spirit is to forget the letter and enter into the spiritual realization of His omnipresent life. When we are in the Spirit, we do not worship with audible words or visible attitudes, but with that exalted spiritual feeling that enters into the very soul of the Infinite and there awakens to the great eternal truth that my Father and I are one. When we are in the Spirit, we inwardly know that God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, and we can feel that sublime nearness thrill every atom in our being. We need nothing to prove to us that we are one with God, for we can feel that it is the truth. Nor do we question any more whether God be personal or not. We know that we are with Him and that He is with us, and that is sufficient. His personal presence is more real to us than our own existence. We therefore need not reason on that subject. We have seen Him in the Spirit, but that which is in the Spirit, form cannot measure, nor words define. The Word of God is the word of truth. All truth is Scripture, wherever found or by whom presented, and all Scripture is written when the mind is in the Spirit. Therefore, to understand the Scripture we must enter the Spirit, and read while illumined by the Spirit. We shall then find, upon every page, the bread of heaven, the waters of life, the meat that ye know not of. The key to the Scriptures is not some system of symbolical interpretation, nor some special method of metaphysical or spiritual analysis. The key is simply to enter the Spirit when you begin to read. The Spirit reveals everything that is sacred and true. To live exclusively in materiality, that is, in the lower story of being, is the cause of all weakness and weariness. The remedy for such conditions will therefore be found in spirituality, which means to live in the upper story. So long as the mind is high in the world of consciousness, there can be no weakness or weariness in the person. We cannot be weary while we are filled with the strength of the Most High, and we are in perfect touch with this great strength while the mind is living in the high places of the Spirit. When we come down to the earthy, we lose this superior power and become weak as mere men. We are limited in every respect and have to watch ourselves at every turn lest we overtax the system. But when we do all things in the realization that we are spiritual beings filled with supreme power from on high, there is no limit to what we can do. Our strength is eternally renewed because we are waiting upon the Lord, we are living with Him, doing all things for Him, and in return we receive all things from Him. When the mind lives constantly in the higher states of being, more perfect oneness with the Infinite is attained. We come nearer and nearer to the life and the Spirit of the Supreme, and, in consequence, we are supplied with new life and power every moment. We are going into the source of all power, we are beginning to live and move and have our being in the very essence of that power, and we are becoming stronger by far than all the weakness and the weariness in the world. We are no longer subject to the laws of material existence. What holds true in the life of mere man does not hold true for us anymore. We have entered a new life and are ascending triumphantly to the supreme heights of that life. The seeming weakness of the flesh has given place to the limitless strength of the Spirit. For the very moment we begin to live in the Spirit, the power of the Spirit begins to live in us. And that which lives in us lives in every element of the body as well as in every attribute of mind and soul. Spirituality is the perfect remedy for all the ills of life, and to live the spiritual life is the greatest thing that man can do. Therefore, to promote spiritual growth among all minds that are ready, is of more importance than all other objects and aims combined. Thousands realize this, and, in consequence, are ever in search for methods through which the life of the Spirit may be found. Methods, however, are of secondary importance. When the heart begins to feel the need of the Spirit, and all the powers of mind begin to desire the Spirit, the perfect way will be opened. To promote spiritual growth we must live in the spiritual center of the divine that is within us. But that divine center is not found through methods. No system of mental gymnastics can open the gates to the kingdom within, nor can any system of logical reasoning in abstract truth cause the mind to be illumined with light from on high. Spiritual illumination does not come through a mere intellectual process, however exact. It comes only when the desires of the heart are spiritualized by a power that is infinitely greater than man. To think the truth, even with absolute exactness, will not avail unless we think in the spirit of truth. The intellectual form of the truth has no power. It is the inner spirit of the truth that gives life, freedom, and illumination to man. And when we begin to know this inner spirit of the truth, our minds have entered into the very soul of the real. Then it is that we gain power that to many seems superhuman. Then it is that we take full possession of our own life and our own destiny. Then it is that we find the faith that moves mountains, and through the life of this faith we press on and on to the great goal we have in view, removing every barrier in the way, overcoming every difficulty, surmounting every obstacle, rising higher than ever before every time we fall, transforming every seeming defeat into a great and glorious victory, passing through the fires of tribulation without even a hair being scorched, and coming out of every trying experience with greater purity and greater strength, realizing one ideal after another, ascending from one pinnacle of attainment to one that is higher still, finding answer after answer to the prayers we prayed in days gone by, until every desire is fulfilled and every dream of the soul made true. There is no reason whatever why anyone should become discouraged, or be tempted to give up because the good things desired are not realized when expected. That which is your own will positively come to you, and everything is your own that you can use in the building of a greater and more beautiful life. Continue in the faith that you will now begin to realize the fullness of life, and enter into the inner spirit of that faith. Some of the greatest things in the world have been gained after many years of constant faith and prayer, things that would not have been gained if those who prayed had lived in discouragement and doubt. If there is anything that you can use in the building of a great life, pray for it until you receive it, no matter how many months or years may be required to cause your prayer to come true. Pray in the inner spirit of faith, and when the time is ripe, be it tomorrow or 20 years from now, your prayer will be answered. When your prayers are not answered at once, do not come to the conclusion that it is not best for you to have it. If that which you pray for will add to the welfare of somebody's life, it is best for you to have it. Therefore, continue to pray for it until you receive it. It is best that you should have everything that is good and true and beautiful. All that is good for man, and it is the will of God that man should receive it. But God gives us only that which we desire. We have individual choice, and we must express our desire in the true spirit of faith. What we ask for will come when our faith is right and our life prepared to properly use the great good desired. To promote spiritual growth, the inner light must shine in the outer life, and the inner world of divine truth must be expressed in every part of mind and body. The expression of the divinity within is absolutely necessary, and must be in every direction. Thousands today are expressing truth only for the purpose of securing health of body and peace of mind, and though they are having good results, they will find that in trying to perfect only a part of the outer life they have failed to bring forth the whole of the inner life. They will also find that the marvelous powers of the within have been permitted to sleep. After some years, such minds will find that they have accomplished nothing more than being well and comfortable physically. But this is not all that we are living for. A genius is asleep in the subconscious of every mind, a spiritual giant is within us awaiting recognition, and in the soul is the Christ knocking at the door. These must not be kept waiting age after age while we are only concerned with being well and happy on the surface. It is not right to live a small life, no matter how comfortable that life may be, when we have received the gifts of the supreme life from on high. The expression of the Spirit should be universal in all the actions of man. The labor of the hands should be filled with the life of the Spirit. The work of the mind should be animated with the one power of Spirit, and every act of consciousness should feel the divine presence of the Spirit. There are few, however, who think of expressing divine spirit in everyday work, and consequently, the spiritual life becomes a thing apart. But when the personal life is separated from the spirit, darkness, confusion, sickness and trouble begin, existence becomes a burden, and though we may possess the wealth of the world, life has nothing of worth to give. There is no joy in things unless the power of the Spirit is in the world of things. There is nothing to live for unless we live for the Spirit, and when we begin to live for the Spirit, all things, from the least importance in the physical realm to the most precious elements in the highest spiritual realms, all become ministering angels, adding eternally to the worth, the beauty and the joy of personal life. To him who lives in the Spirit, everything in life has much to give, and to him, the best alone is given. When we think, the mind should be filled with the Spirit, and our intellects will become brilliant in the true sense of that term. When we read, our eyes should be filled with the Spirit, and our sight will ever become stronger and better. When we work, every muscle in the body should be filled with the Spirit, and we should renew our strength from the source divine. We thus cause the outer life and the inner life to become one life, and it is such a life that we are here to live now. Say that life is beautiful, no matter how things may appear on the surface. Say that you are strong and well no matter how the body may feel. You will thus speak the truth about the true state of being, and what you say, you create. Say that you are well and you create health. Say that life is divinely beautiful and you create such a life. And what we create today, we shall realize tomorrow. There are a number of methods through which the spiritual nature of man can be developed and brought into larger and larger expression, but the majority of those methods are so complex that they lead more into intellectuality than into spirituality. To develop the mind, with its many faculties, complex methods are, as a rule, necessary, but to develop the soul, the simpler the methods are, the better. The secret is to keep the eye single upon the sublime spiritual state, to form the highest possible conception of the most perfect spiritual qualities imaginable, and to think of those things. The power of concentration is truly extraordinary whenever it may be applied, and its effectiveness is nowhere as thorough as in the world of the spirit. To think constantly of things spiritual, with an effort to enter more and more into the real life of the spirit, is to spiritualize all the elements of thought, all the phases of consciousness, and all the active states of realization. In consequence, everything in human life will become more spiritual. What we think of we create, therefore the more we think of things spiritual the more spirituality we shall develop, and when the whole of thought is concentrated constantly upon our highest spiritual ideal, we shall actually move into the real spiritual state. There is a spiritual state of consciousness immediately above the usual conscious state, and it is the lifting of mind and thought up into this higher state that produces spirituality. Therefore, spiritual development will necessarily require the ascending tendency in every action in life. This requirement, however, is invariably supplied, when the power of attention is constantly directed upon the spiritual state. When we think of that which is spiritual, everything in life begins to ascend towards the higher spiritual states. That is, when our thinking of the spiritual is inspired with a deep soul desire to rise and live on the heights. Live with the beautiful side in human nature and your own life will grow more and more beautiful until you become an inspiration to all the world. Look for the greater good in all things and you will find God in all things. And when you find God in all things, God will be with you in all things. Say that life is beautiful, no matter how things may appear on the surface. Say that you are strong and well, no matter how the body may feel. You will thus speak the truth about the true state of being, and what you say, you create. Say that you are well and you create health. Say that life is divinely beautiful and you create such a life. And what we create today, we shall realize tomorrow. The pure in heart shall see God, and to be pure in heart is to think pure thoughts, the thought of sublime spiritual truth. The reason we do not see God is found in the fact that we have clouded our minds with impure thoughts. Thought that is out of harmony with the divine order of things. Pure water is transparent. The same is true of a pure mind. The deep things of God are easily discerned through a pure mind, just as easily as the rocks of the riverbed when the water is pure and still. Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one cometh unto the Father but by me. John 14:6. The great statements of Jesus Christ were never spoken from the personal, but always from the impersonal. No truth ever sprung from the personal mind because it is only the impersonal that can touch the universal, and it is only in the universal that absolute truth can be found. When the mind enters the impersonal state, consciousness comes in touch with the cosmic state of being, and in that state we realize the I am of being. We discern what the I am actually is, and we find that the consciousness of the I Am is the open door to the limitless vastness of the spiritual universe. I am the door. Enter through the door of I Am and we pass into that immense world that is found on the upper side, or the divine side of sublime existence. The I Am in every soul is the Spirit of Christ within us, and when we become conscious of the Christ within us we can truthfully say that, in Christ Jesus, the same mind is in me. The mind that was in Christ Jesus knew the I Am of eternal being, in brief, was the I Am of eternal being, and therefore could say that I am the way, and the truth, and the life. But this same I Am is in every soul and constitutes the real me of every soul, and as we grow in Christ we grow into the realization of that great truth that we are one with Christ, and that the same Christ that reigned supremely in the personality of Jesus shall reign supremely in us. The Christ within us is the only begotten of the Father, and is created in the image and likeness of the Father. There is only one Son of God, but this one Son reigns in every soul, and constitutes the I Am in every soul. The I Am that occupies the throne of your spiritual being is the only begotten Son of God, and as this Son is like the Father. You cannot grow into the likeness of the Father unless you do so through the Son, nor can you enter into the presence of the Father without going through the Son, because it is the Son that unites the Father with you. The Son of God is one with God, therefore if you wish to realize your oneness with God you must enter into the life and the Spirit of the Son. In other words, you must become conscious of the I Am within you because it is this I Am that is created in the image of God, and we are not one with God unless we realize that we are created in the image of God. To be one with God is to know that we are in the Father and the Father in us. But we cannot enter into that consciousness wherein we know that we are in the Father until we are conscious of our exact likeness to the Father. When Jesus declared, I am the way, he spoke in the consciousness of the Christ. It was the supreme I Am that made this great statement, and this I Am is the way. The supreme I Am is the way to everything that man may need or desire throughout eternity, for I am in God. And in God we find the allness of all that is. The I Am is the way to God, because it is the I Am in man that is always one with God. I am the door, and there is no other door. It is therefore evident that no one cometh unto the Father but by me. To go to God you must go by way of the Christ, that is, you must enter into the inner consciousness of the Christ that reigns within us. You must enter so deeply into the spirit of your own sublime being that you can readily realize that I am, and know that I am is not distinct from you but is the real and the eternal of you. Where I am the ye shall be also. You shall someday enter that same exalted state where your consciousness of the I Am will be so perfect that you will know that you are I Am. Then the supreme I Am will speak in you as I did in Jesus and will in like manner declare in you, I am the way. When we find the Spirit of Christ within us we find the way, we then enter the path that leads to the fullness of life and the perfection of being. To daily ascend higher and higher in the consciousness of this Spirit of the Christ is to follow the Christ, and to follow the Christ is to enter the kingdom. The I Am is the truth because all truth has its source in the divine being of man. That the real man is created in the image of God is the one supreme truth, and the real man is the I Am. To know the truth is to enter into the life and the spirit of the I Am within, that is, the Christ within, and to enter into the Christ is to enter into freedom because there can be no bondage or ill whatever in him. This is how we gain freedom when we know the truth, not by forming intellectual concepts about truth, but by entering consciously into the spirit of the Christ within which is the truth. To enter into the Christ consciousness is to become conscious of the real being of the Christ. And the real being of the Christ is identical with the real being of man. To become conscious of the real being of man is to know the truth concerning man, and when we know this truth we know that man is divine because man, in his eternal nature, is identical with the nature of the Christ. When we know that we are created in the likeness of truth we know that we are truth, and we can say, when speaking from the Christ consciousness, into which we have entered, I am the truth. And when we know that we are truth we are conscious only of that which is truth. We cannot be out of the truth when we are in truth, and as there can be no ill or bondage in the truth we must necessarily be in absolute freedom while we are consciously in the truth. The I Am is the life, all life comes from God, and the life that is in us is the life of the only begotten of God. The life eternal is the life of God in us, and it is the I am in us that lives the life of God in us. To gain the life more abundant, it is therefore necessary to enter more and more deeply into the consciousness of the I am within. In brief, the more fully we realize the I am or the Christ within us, the more we live. And when we enter so perfectly into the Christ consciousness that we actually know that the real in us is identical with the I am in us, then we begin to live the life eternal. Then we actually enter eternity, while still in personal form. Then we know with positive conviction that we are immortal, and we need no further evidence for any other source whatever. When we learn that I am the door, and seek this door in the spiritual life within us, we shall find it, and as we pass through this door we enter the other side of life, the divine side, the eternal side. There we find the kingdom of God that is within us, and beyond is the shining shore. But we are not required to leave the personal form and the physical life in order to live on the other side of life. True being is to live on the spiritual side of life and to manifest the perfection of spiritual being in the personal side of life. Thus the Word becomes flesh and the glory of God is made visible in man. For narrow is the gate, and strait is the way, that leadeth unto life, and those alone who are in the Spirit can find it. Follow the light of the Spirit in all things. Choose the living Christ as the pattern in all things, and depend upon God in all things. Do not seek the truth, seek the Spirit of truth. The Spirit leads into all truth. To know the truth is to know the way. To be guided by the Spirit into all truth is to walk in the light of the Spirit all the way, and the way of light leads into the kingdom of eternal life. Follow the words of the Christ until the Spirit is found. Then follow the Spirit into the greater life of the Christ. Keep the eye single upon that light that is revealed through the spiritual vision of the soul. Where that light is shining, there is the gate, beyond is the way that leadeth unto life, and all who are in the Spirit shall find it even now. To know and think the truth, to mentally live in the spiritual understanding of truth, and to give constant expression, in thought, to the words of truth, is to train the mind to know the truth in a larger and larger measure, and to know the truth is to create and express true conditions, throughout the entire personality. A statement of truth is the absolute truth expressed in words, that is, the mental or verbal expression of a certain state of perfect and divine being. Therefore, a statement of truth does not describe things as they are in the external, but describes man as he is in the Spirit. And when the mind begins to think of man as he is in the Spirit, the perfect qualities of the Spirit will be unfolded and brought out into the personal life. The life of the Spirit is the true life of man because man is a spiritual being, the soul is the real man, the mind and the body are merely instruments. For this reason it is evident that when man thinks of himself he must necessarily think of himself as he is in the Spirit. The conditions of the body do not describe the divine state of the soul. The soul is real, absolute, divine, perfect, complete, created in the image of God, while the personality is but a partial expression of the real, in many respects incomplete, and in a state of development. When man thinks that the incomplete conditions of his personality constitute himself, he is not thinking the truth about himself. His thought is false, and false thinking produces false or detrimental conditions in mind and body. However, when he thinks of himself as he is in the divine perfection of his being, he is thinking the truth about himself. His thought is the truth, and the thinking of truth produces true or wholesome conditions in mind and body. Therefore, so long as man thinks of himself as being an imperfect personality, he will cause his personality to be imperfect, weak, sickly and more or less in disorder. But when he constantly thinks of himself as he is in the perfect, wholesome, divine state of his real spiritual being, he will cause his personality to be wholesome, healthful, harmonious and in the most perfect state of order. The truth gives freedom. To know the truth is to live in the perfect world of truth. When the mind discerns truth, all thought is created in the likeness of truth. All thought is truth, and man is as he thinks. To think the truth is to create that which is true. And when the true comes into being, the false ceases to be. There can be no darkness in the light, there can be no false conditions in the truth. Therefore, when man is in the truth, the wholeness and the perfection of the truth will pervade his entire being, through and through. Every part will be true to the truth, and every element will express the divinity of man. When the mind thinks the truth, every mental conception of true being will formulate itself in a statement of truth. These statements will convey to men's intelligence the higher understanding of all that is. The mind will learn to see all things as they are in truth. The divine perfection of all things will be realized. All thought will contain the spirit of truth, and man, himself, will be the truth in every fiber of his being. Therefore, every mind should think statements of truth as frequently as possible, and with the deepest conviction possible. The conditions of the personality are the direct effects of the states of the mind. Therefore, the conditions of the personality will always be true, good and perfect so long as the states of the mind are true, and the states of the mind will always be true so long as the mind thinks the truth about man as he is in the divine perfection of his real spiritual being. To train the mind to think the real truth about man, statements of truth, of every possible description, should be employed extensively. In brief, the mind should be daily drilled, in the thinking of absolute truth, that is, the mental or verbal expression of statements of truth, and to enter into the spiritual understanding of the real significance of every statement should be the central purpose in view. The mere mechanical repetition of such statements will not avail. The real truth of each statement is discerned only when the mind enters into the very soul of the statement, and it is the real truth that we wish to know, because it is the knowing of real truth that alone makes for freedom in life and that produces the fullness of life. To train the mind to think the real truth, the following statements of truth may be employed, though the wording may be changed to correspond with the state of each individual need, or the degree of conscious development in the spiritual life. The perfection of my being is now realized in the spiritual understanding of truth. The understanding of truth reveals to the mind the divine perfection of all being, and the more spiritual this understanding is, the more clearly can the divinity of man be discerned. Spirituality illumines, because to be spiritual is to live in the supreme light of the Spirit. In the Spirit there is no darkness, therefore, in the Spirit all things can be seen as they are, and to see all things as they are is to see that all things are created in the likeness of God. The realization of the great truth that being is perfect, created in the image of God, will cause this perfection to be expressed. What we realize in the Spirit will be expressed in the person. Therefore, when the real truth of this statement is understood, the personal life will be a manifestation of the spiritual life, and all will be well in body, mind and soul. God is love, and in him I live and move and have my being. To live the true spiritual life, the life of complete emancipation and high spiritual attainment, it is necessary to love all things with the pure, limitless love of the soul. But such a love cannot be realized so long as consciousness is personal only. It is when we feel that we live in the love of God that we gain consciousness of that love that loves all things at all times, and we shall invariably feel that we do live in the love of God when we know the real truth of the statement that God is boundless love, and that we have our being in him. To realize that we live in God is to feel his presence. And when we do feel his presence we become absolutely filled with a love that is so tender, so beautiful, so high and so sublime, that we are placed completely at one with all the universe. We immediately transcend, and eliminate entirely, every adverse feeling. We are at peace with everything, and that peace is animated with the spirit of that love that cannot be measured. To live in such a love is supreme joy, and it is the privilege of every soul now. I am fixed on high in the spirit of truth. The I am of every soul can truthfully make this statement, for real being is permanently established in the true life of the Spirit, and as every individual is the I am of his own being, every individual, to speak the truth, must make this statement about himself. To realize the truth of this statement is to enter more and more into the fixed state of true being, and to grow in the realization of this state is to gain that absolute safety and security where the soul finds complete divine protection. To be in the spirit of truth is to be in the very life of true existence, and to be fixed in this life is to occupy a permanent place in God's own beautiful world. In other words, to be fixed in the spirit of truth is to be anchored in God, and we can readily realize how absolutely secure such a state of being must be. When we make this statement, we should try to realize what existence in the truth must necessarily mean, how it must feel to be in the consciousness of the spirit of such an existence, and what a life must hold in store that is permanently established on the very heights of that existence. The more fully we enter into the soul of the truth that this statement conveys, the sooner we shall realize the truth itself, and when we do, we shall know that we are fixed on high, permanently established in the spirit of truth, forever anchored in God. My spiritual being is the expression of eternal life. The life eternal is the whole of real, absolute, limitless life, and the real, spiritual man is this life individualized and expressed. The life eternal contains the whole complete existence. Therefore, to live the life eternal is to live all that there is in absolute existence. It is the life eternal that the soul lives, and since man is the soul, he should affirm that he is living the life eternal now, and that his true being is the perfect expression of that life. The life eternal is the life of the divinity that is in man, and the true being of man constitutes that divinity, but we manifest in personal life only that which we become conscious of. Therefore the mind must be unfolded to realize the true nature of the life eternal before we can enter into life now. To unfold the mind into this conscious realization, all thinking should be animated with the highest spiritual conception of the life eternal that we can possibly form, and the great truth that the true spiritual being of man is the perfect expression of that life, should be held before the mental vision constantly. In addition, every effort we make to live the life, that is, to live in the soul of real life, will cause this statement, not only to seem true in the ideal, but to prove itself to be true in the actual. I am ever ascending into the greater and greater freedom of God. God is absolute freedom, and man is eternally becoming what God is. To realize this truth is to place life in that position where personal existence will, at every step in human advancement, be in full possession of that measure of freedom that present consciousness can possibly involve. This means that the life of every moment will be absolutely free, and that the measure of freedom will increase in perfect harmony with the increase of the mind's capacity for freedom. The real man is ever in possession of all the freedom that present development can comprehend and employ, and is ever ascending into the greater freedom of God. Therefore, to enter into the realization of this truth is to keep the eye upon the supreme freedom, to steadily rise into more and more of that freedom, and this is the true path to complete emancipation. When we steadily grow into the freedom of God, we must necessarily grow out of everything that is limited, undesirable or adverse. The lesser passes away as we pass upward and onward into the ever-expanding world of the greater. God is health and wholeness, and I am his image and likeness. There can be no sickness in God, for the same reason there can be no sickness in the real being of man, and as each individual is what he is in his own real being, he must necessarily be well at all times. The real man cannot possibly be sick any more than light can be darkness, because he is as God is. Therefore no man can truthfully say, at any time, that he is sick, weak or disabled. He cannot be any of these things, no matter what personal conditions may seem to be. The real man is always well, and I am the real man. I am not the body, nor the instrument, nor the garment. I am the I am, the image of God, the exact likeness of the Most High. When adverse conditions appear in the personality, there are personal causes, either physical or mental, but these conditions can never enter the life of the real spiritual man. The real man continues to be well and strong at all times, and the life of the real man is perpetually a life of perfect health and wholeness. To live constantly in the conscious realization of the life of the real man is to always feel well, in body, mind and soul. There can be no sickness in the body so long as we live in the life of health. And we do live in the life of health so long as we continue in the realization of the great truth that God is health, and that we are as He is. Those adverse conditions that may exist in the body now will entirely disappear the moment we enter into the realization of real life, and begin to live in the spirit of the truth that we are as God is perfect and whole, now and forever. My Father and I are one. The mind that was in Christ Jesus, the same mind is in you. and this mind knows that my Father and I are one. When we enter into the spirit of the divine mind, we realize that there is no separation whatever in the spirit. The spirit of the human soul is absolutely one with the spirit of the infinite. There is no difference whatever in divine essence or soul life. Only the infinite is God, while the human soul is an expression of God, the Son of God, the only begotten of God. When we enter into the very presence of God, we know that no separation can exist in the spirit, and we also learn that the Christ consciousness implies the highest consciousness of this divine oneness. The mind that was in Christ Jesus is conscious of the spiritual oneness that exists between God and man, and we enter into that mind whenever we feel that we are in the presence of God. To realize that we are one with God, in spirit and in truth, is to realize that we are also one with the life, the divinity and the perfection of God, and therefore we are as God is. What is in God is in us. We live the same life that He lives, and since there can be no imperfection in His life, there can be no imperfection in our life. The spiritual life of man is perfect, and when man enters fully into the consciousness of his spiritual life, his personal life will become the exact expression of his spiritual life. Then the Word will become flesh, and no ill can exist in the body anymore, nor can the untruth any longer exist in the mind. To grow in the Christ consciousness is to grow in the consciousness of the spiritual life, and as the light of the spiritual life becomes stronger and stronger in mind, these elements of darkness, sickness, adverseness or imperfection that may remain in personal existence will entirely disappear. Then we shall realize the emancipated life, the freedom that comes from the knowing of the truth. God is my strength. I am strong with His limitless life and power. To dwell perpetually in the conviction that the strength of the infinite is our strength, is to steadily grow in the conscious realization of power, and the more power we become conscious of, the more power we possess. To think of weakness in any sense of the term becomes impossible when we know that the limitless power of the infinite is just as much ours as it is His. All that the Father hath is mine. And when we cease to think of weakness, we shall never again be conscious of weakness. To think of truth, we can never admit that we are weak. We cannot even admit that it is possible for us to become weak. When we feel weak, we are simply permitting ourselves to be untrue to ourselves. We ignore the reality of our own being and cause the mind to create conditions in our system that are false. Thus evil begins. But so long as we cause the mind to be fixed in that great truth that God is our strength, we shall not be conscious of anything that is not strength. Nor will the mind create any condition that is not true to the truth. When we realize that the strength of the infinite is our strength, and that the strength of the infinite is limitless, we must come to the conclusion that we are capable of doing anything that the living of a great life may demand. Whatever we are called upon to do, we are equal to it, because, have we not the power of the Supreme with which to work? In the light of this truth, we can never say that we are unable to do what the hour may require, nor can we say truthfully that we are ever tired, wearied or overcome. Such thoughts do not belong to the truth. While we are in the truth, there is nothing that can make us tired, nor is there anything that is too much for us. God is our strength, and the power of Him that is within us is greater than anything in the world. Though the flesh may seem to be weak, it seems so only because we have not fully accepted what is truly our own, the strength of the infinite. But when we do accept this strength, the power of the Spirit will manifest in the flesh. We shall then be strong, through and through, with power from on high. Every partless life, because God lives with limitless life, and all that the Father hath is mine. My being is sustained in the word of truth. The word of truth is the coming forth of truth into life. It is truth taking shape and form in the world of being, and to be sustained in the word of truth is to so live that everything in life is shaped, formed and determined by the power of truth. To think frequently of the great statement that we are sustained in the shaping and forming power of truth is to place the mind more and more perfectly in harmony with that power. In consequence, the mind will be shaped more and more in the exact likeness of truth. When the mind assumes the form of truth, every action of the mind becomes an expression of truth. The mind itself becomes a true mind, and all thinking will convey the elements of truth to every part of the being of man. When the mind is formed by the truth, only true conditions will be formed by the mind, and therefore, neither sickness, inharmony, weakness, adversity, pain nor want can possibly exist anywhere in the human system. To feel that we are sustained in the word of truth is to produce that deep realization of the power of truth that is so conducive to the full understanding of truth, and as we grow in the understanding of truth we grow into the freedom that is produced by the truth. The word of truth is the living truth, that is, the power of truth expressed in tangible action, and is therefore distinct from abstract truth, or the mere intellectual conception of truth. The intellectual aspect of truth does not sustain the true life because it has not become the word, or the power of true formation. But the realization of the world of truth takes life into what may be termed truth in action, and when we are in the truth in action we are acting in the truth. To act, live or think in the truth is to give the sustaining power of truth to every action, and thus every action will not only be a true action, but it will contain the limitless power of truth. This is why no true action can fail, and also why no ill can possibly come to any human personality that lives in the word of truth and that is consciously resolved into the pure spiritual essence of truth. When the human system is sustained in the word of truth, every part of the system is fixed on high, that is, placed within the true state of being where everything is created in the image of God, and where everything is always well. In this state the good alone exists, everything has freedom because it is in the world of absolute freedom, and therefore everything will do what divine purpose planned that it should do. This is the true meaning of freedom, and it is such freedom alone that can give to every soul what the largest life and the greatest joy may need or desire. But let your speech be yea, yea, nay, nay. Every statement we make should either affirm that which is true or deny that which is not true. Statements that contain both the elements of truth and the elements of untruth are of the evil one. They confuse the mind, and lead to sin, sickness and death. Make no compromise with the untruth, and let no half-truth find expression in your life. Give positive expression, in thought, word, action and life, to that which you know to be real, and eliminate completely what you know to be unreal. Make your life a living affirmation of the great things that are before, and so live that everything you do will deny the lesser things that are passing away. Spiritual consciousness is in the light of the truth, and can always see the truth clearly. To see the truth clearly is to know the truth, and to know the truth is to be free. The spiritual understanding of truth is the direct consequence of the mind's insight into that realm where everything is what it is, where nothing can be added and nothing taken away. When you inwardly feel what you say, you give spiritual power to your words, and what you say will surely come to pass. Finding the lost word. Illumined minds in every age have declared their belief in what may be termed the sacred word, or that formulated statement of truth through which unbounded power could be expressed. According to this belief, anyone who knew this secret word or statement, could, by the use of that word, secure anything he might desire. Through this word the sick could be healed, adversity overcome, calamities prevented, enemies turned into friends, earnest desires realized, life prolonged, and everything gained that would tend to promote the comfort and joy of existence. And those who were high in the scale of spiritual attainments, could, with this word, perform miracles. This was the belief, and this is still the belief among nearly all who recognize divine power in man. But what this word really is a mystery in the minds of the many, and therefore it is usually called the lost word. The great word is not a word, as many suppose, nor a definite statement of truth. The great word is the soul of every word, the spirit of every thought and the inner power of every expressed statement. In the minds of the great majority it is a lost word, because their speech does not have soul, their thought does not have spirit, and their statements of truth, or untruth, are devoid of inner power. But those who are learning to live, think and act, not as material personalities, but as sons of God, are finding the great word. They are beginning to speak with authority, and there is hidden power in everything they say. What they say will come true, does come true. What they think they can do they gain the power to do, and their work invariably contains some exceptional quality that the ordinary mind cannot define. The spiritually minded, however, can understand. They know the secret. They realize that the great word is the supreme power of divine being coming forth into the speech, the thought and the actions of the fully awakened soul. And if these minds will continue to enter more and more deeply into the spirit of this supreme power, they will find that the great word can do everything that the ages have declared that it could do. Thousands today do, at times, use this secret word, that is, they give soul to what they say, and they give spirit to what they think. In consequence, their words carry weight and their thoughts have extraordinary power, but they do not, as a rule, understand how the power of the soul is given to word and thought, and therefore do not secure results whenever they may so desire. The secret, however, is simple, so simple that it can be comprehended and applied by anyone. To begin, train yourself to feel inner power whenever you give expression to a statement of truth, and whenever you think, enter into the spirit of your thought. When you speak, do not simply say words, say more. Never indulge in empty speech, that is, place yourself, your whole self, your great self into every word you utter. Let the spoken word be the body of your speech, but see that every body has a great soul. The audible word itself has no power, but that word can carry all the power that you can inwardly feel at the time it is spoken. When you give soul to your speech, every word will contain hidden power, and it is this hidden power of the spoken word that constitutes the secret word, the great word, the word that works wonders for those who understand. We realize, therefore, that there is nothing mystical or mysterious about the great word. It is simply a measure of supreme spiritual power taking expression in thought or speech. Jesus Christ was the greatest master in the use of the word that we know, though there have been hundreds in every age that have discerned its power and applied it to a great degree. In this age there are more than there ever were before who are consciously using the word, but as the general understanding of its nature is not clear, results are not as great as they might be. But it is predicted that we are to do the greater works, and it is our privilege to do so now because we have received the power. There are thousands in the world today who are ready to do the greater works. They understand the law, they know the truth, and their desire to live the truth is becoming stronger every hour. But there is one thing more needful. We must enter more deeply into the spirit. To believe in things spiritual is not sufficient, nor will the daily effort to conform with spiritual principles supply the necessary requirements. We must do all of these things and more. We must aim to enter into the very life of the innermost power of the spirit, whatever we think, say or do. When we think the truth, we must mentally feel the inner spirit of that truth. When we desire the realization of some divine quality or perfect condition, we must mentally feel the deep invincible soul of that desire. And when we speak, we must not speak as personal men, but as spiritual sons of the Most High, endued with limitless power from the Supreme. In brief, whatever we do in body, mind or soul, we must enter more deeply into the hidden powers of the Spirit, and must try to realize that that power is the very soul of all power. When we think we can feel the soul of divine power, we must try to enter into the soul of that soul, and when we realize that a deeper soul state is being felt, we must try to enter into the soul of this deeper state, and so on, ever going deeper and deeper into the limitless vastness of the Spirit. Thus we shall gain the great word, the word that gives soul to every word, spirit to every thought, and inner power to every statement. Give soul to every spoken word, and you can heal yourself by saying, I am well. You can emancipate yourself from every adverse condition by saying, I am the freedom of divine truth, and you can cause every atom in your being to thrill with life and power by saying, I am the strength of the infinite. Give spirit to every thought you think, and every condition you picture in the mind will be realized in the body. Every true desire you feel will be fulfilled, and every dream of greater things will positively come true. What you think you can do you will gain the power to do, because every thought that is filled with the Spirit is also filled with the limitless power of the Spirit. Give inner power to every statement, and whatever you affirm to be true you will cause to come true. The great word is creative, and if the hidden power of this word is in your statement, it will create whatever your statement may affirm. Therefore, select your statements with wisdom, and pray only for that which you know that you want. When you regain the lost word, all your prayers will be answered and all your desires come true. It is therefore advisable to pray for wisdom first, to desire spirituality first, and to seek first the kingdom of God. The power of the Spirit finds full expression only through the Word, but since mankind in general does not possess the Word, it is usually spoken of as the lost Word. To the mind that is only partly awakened, this Word is something vague, almost incomprehensible, yet a jewel most earnestly desired. He feels that there is something within him that can know this Word, and speak the Word, but it seems to be lost to his mind in some mysterious manner. It is the speaking of the Word, however, that heals the sick and that makes man free. It is therefore most desirable to possess. When it is stated that the Word is lost, the idea is not that the human race possessed it once, and lost it later. The entire race never did possess the Word, never had the power to speak the Word. The Word has been lost to the race from the beginning of manifested existence in this sphere, but has been found in every age by the illumined minds of that age, and through those minds declared to the world. Instead of speaking of the Word as the lost Word, it would therefore be better to speak of it as the hidden Word, hidden from the mind of personal man, but revealed to the minds of illumined souls. Those minds that are on the borderland of the Great Awakening, realize that immediately beyond their present mental comprehension lies a world of wisdom and light, indescribable in its marvelousness and beauty. To some minds it is so near that at times the veil is parted, and they obtain a glimpse of the glory and splendor that was, is and is to be. Others have crossed the border at certain periods in their lives, and have actually entered, for a tune, the Father's house of the many mansions. But the great purpose of every soul is to some day enter this celestial world and abide there always. Many have believed that we must leave the body before we can enter that sublime realm. The truth is, however, that we may enter today, if we are ready, and live in that higher world while still living upon earth in physical form. We shall then find that the earth is not outside of the kingdom, but that the real earth, spiritually discerned and understood in truth, is also one of his secret places. To have the spiritual discernment to look into this beautiful world, these higher realms, and behold the sublime glory of the kingdom, the Father's house of the many mansions, is to regain the lost Word. It is for you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, and whoever has sufficient spiritual power to part the veil and see those things that are prepared for them that love him, has found the hidden Word. Now he knows the mysteries, he has seen them as they are. He has crossed the border, he has trod the shining shore, and his eyes have beheld eternity. He has seen the Word, because the one divine Word is the revelation of all that is eternal. Whoever can see that which eternally is, that to which nothing can be added, nothing taken away, that which is the foundation of all, the life of all, the all in all, can see the Word. The Word is revealed to him, divine wisdom has inspired his soul, the light of the Spirit has illumined his mind, and he speaks as one having authority. He speaks, not of that which others have told him, not as the scribes. He has seen the mysteries, he bears witness to the truth because he has witnessed and beheld the truth with his own illumined mind. The heavens have opened before him, he has not only had a vision, he has seen the truth that is beyond the vision, and that truth is the Word. To reach this sublime state the secret is faith, not the faith that believes, but the faith that knows, the faith that can see with the vision of the Spirit. Every soul that has some discernment of higher things has a portion of faith. This faith increases as the soul ascends, and the soul ascends as the faith becomes larger, higher and more illumined. To feel the touch of the Spirit is the beginning of real faith. And the nearer the soul lives to the Spirit, the larger the faith. In the first stages of faith, the way is opened for the power of the Spirit to come forth and prepare the human temple for the greater things that are to follow. After this period, if the mind continues in spiritual growth, illumination begins, and will continue until the Christ state is attained. During the first stages of spiritual illumination, the mind feels the nearness of a higher world. And here is the soul's opportunity to take many steps towards the heights. Whenever these sublime moments appear, enter the stillness of the Spirit, and place body, mind and thought in touch with the soul's eternal calm. Then when in the peace that passeth understanding, open the eyes of the Spirit, and in faith, desire to meet him face to face. He may not appear, but be not impatient, Know that he will appear, and you can wait. You can wait an eternity for such a privilege, for a single moment in his presence is a million heavens in one. But when you do draw near enough to behold his shining glory, give thanks with all the power of heart and soul. The Redeemer has entered your life, you have found the way, you have entered the great climax of human existence, and now you may begin to live. Henceforth, give your highest thought and attention to every spiritual experience that may appear, no matter how insignificant it may seem to be. Know that every manifestation of divine presence indicates that you are growing in the Spirit, that your spiritual eyes are being opened, that you are beginning to discern his omnipresence and to know that he is always here, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. To know God is the beginning of all wisdom. To know and feel that God is here, everywhere, that we live in his Spirit, his life, his wisdom, his power, his light and his love now, is to awaken the mind to real wisdom. Then we shall find the hidden word. Then we shall enter the inner sanctuary of the soul and behold the Word of God manifested in the true being of man, eternally creating the true being of man in the likeness of the image divine. And then we behold the Word of truth. In the being of truth we gain the power to speak the word of truth. To know the Word is to have the power to speak the Word, and to speak the Word is to cause the Word to become flesh. Thus the life, the wholeness and the glory of the Spirit is made real in the personal being of man. To grow daily in the Spirit is the way to the higher faith, the larger wisdom and the beautiful life. Aspire constantly to live the life of the Spirit. Turn all thought and attention to the more perfect understanding of the Spirit. Keep the eye single upon the divine perfection of the Spirit, and there shall be many moments when his Spirit will actually appear. When these moments come, grieve not the Spirit away. Receive its life and its power by entering into the stillness within, then open widely the door of the heart that the guest from on high may come in. Soon he will come again. His coming will become more and more frequent, and when you are ready to actually live the life he lives, he will not go away anymore. Whenever the Spirit comes and is received, the Word is being revealed to you, and you obtain a larger glimpse of that sublime state of being where you are about to enter. Never to return to the ways of the world, never to return to the bondage of sin, but to live in the light and the freedom of the Spirit while still in personal form, to walk with God while still walking the earth, to be surrounded and protected by his invisible power while still living and working in the midst of visible things in the world and yet above the world. Whenever you discern more clearly the glory of the kingdom, it means that you are drawing nearer and nearer to the pearly gates. Press on, not with force and will, but with peace and faith, the eye ever single upon the light that leads. It is the will of God that we should enter now. There is another and a better world. That world is not a future state of existence, but an eternal state of existence. It is therefore at hand here and now. To enter the pearly gates is to enter that better world, God's own true world where all is well. And those gates are ajar to all who can speak the word. Light within, guide thou my way. I am seeding truth today. Where thou leadest I will go, and all wisdom I shall know. Peace and joy and truth and love are the blessings from above that will surely come to me when I gently follow thee. Light within, thou light divine, thou shalt never cease to shine, thou canst not depart from me, we are one, for I am thee. Darkness flees and sins depart, truth is reigning in my heart. Endless day dispersed the night when I found I was the light. The royal path to wisdom. Solomon prayed for wisdom and received it. Any other soul may do the same. God is infinite wisdom, and all that the Father hath is mine. We need simply go and receive our own. We may receive from the Supreme Mind, at any time, as much wisdom, on any subject, as our own minds can possibly appropriate. And we may also receive, from the same source, the power to appropriate more. The wisdom that comes from God does not simply pertain to the soul or to the life of some other world, because God is the original source of all wisdom, and therefore we may receive light directly from him on any subject whatever. Nor does the wisdom that comes from God need special interpretation. It is sufficiently clear for anyone to understand who is in harmony with God. When higher wisdom needs interpretation, it is not from God, but is simply the mystical ideas of minds that have not found the clear light of the infinite mind. The mystical wisdom of man is complex and confusing, the wisdom of God is simple and illuminating. The former produces darkness and doubt. The latter produces that faith that knows. When we learn that real wisdom comes directly from God, we shall no longer seek knowledge through the training of the senses to discriminate between illusions, nor shall we depend upon experience for instruction. Real wisdom does not come from experience. Experience can only tell us how it feels to live in illusions and overcome illusions, but it tells us nothing about how it feels to live in the real and ascend into the greater and the greater life of the real. The mind that lives in the light of the Most High knows the result of any experience long before that experience arrives. Therefore, to such a mind, experience can convey no information. If the experience is pleasant, it is welcomed and received for the joy it brings, but if it is not pleasant, it is avoided. And the mind that is taught of God knows beforehand whether any particular experience will be desirable or not. To live with God is to gain good from every source, be the source physical, mental or spiritual, but the wisdom that comes with this good does not come from these various sources. It may come through these sources because to live with God is to touch God everywhere, and thus receive wisdom from God through every channel in the world. To be taught of God is to pray for wisdom, to depend upon God for wisdom, and to live so near to God that we shall be in the light of His wisdom. Whatever we wish to know, we should take it to God, and let His Spirit lead us, guide us, and inspire our minds with the truth desired. The mind that is led by the Spirit will not go wrong, or if it should temporarily be on the verge of taking a misstep, something will interfere. This something may seem to be special providence, and in a certain sense it is, because the infinite is ever ready to do for man whatever he may wish to have done. When we place ourselves in the hands of the infinite, he will find a way, and this way will be revealed to us before it is too late. Sometimes it may not appear until the 11th hour, but it invariably comes in time. We may therefore rest assured in this faith and know, that I will not forsake thee nor leave thee. I am thy Redeemer, I will care for thee. The great secret of all the inspired minds of the ages may be found here. They seemed to have superhuman knowledge, they spoke with authority, and their words have been universally received as the truth. The reason being, they lived in the light of the Most High, they were taught of God. To be taught of God, it is necessary to live with God, walk with God, and open the mind completely to the great influx of supreme light from on high. It is necessary to be in such close spiritual touch with the infinite mind that we can feel the thought of God, and think His thoughts after Him. And this any soul can do. To live with God is the simplest life of all, and also the most beautiful. And to walk with God requires no effort whatever. Any soul that can lift up the mind towards supreme spiritual realms can walk with God now. When we place ourselves in that position where we can be taught of God, it is then that we begin to use the mind in the highest sense. It is then that the mind becomes so transparent that the light of infinite wisdom can shine through and manifest itself in all its brilliancy and glory. It is then that the Word becomes flesh, and the truth of divine being is unfolded in the personal life of man. The true function of the human mind is to think with the infinite mind, because the human mind is an inseparable part of the infinite mind. When the human mind tries to think alone, it becomes confused, and the ideas that it may form are mere illusions. It is therefore evident that all the ideas in the world that have been formed while the human mind was trying to think apart from the infinite mind, are illusions. And the wisdom of the world is full of such illusions. We can remove them completely, however, by turning to God, and opening our minds completely to the clear light from on high. When we begin to receive the wisdom of God, we find that the wisdom of the world was the cause of our trouble. We were living in darkness and could not see the way, therefore took many missteps and made many mistakes. But when we open our minds to the wisdom of God, we are in the light. The way is clear, and we shall not go wrong any more. However, we are not required to ignore everything that man may say in order to receive the pure wisdom of God. God speaks through everything and most of all through man. When we desire, with the whole heart, to be taught of God, we shall constantly receive wisdom from God, and it may come through a million channels. including the mind of man. But we must remember that the mind of man does not simply mean the minds of other men. Our own minds are included in the mind of man, and as we grow in the Spirit we shall receive most of our divine wisdom with our own mentalities as the principal channel. This is the great goal we have in view, but we cannot place our own minds in perfect touch with the infinite mind unless we think of all minds and all things as being channels for the wisdom of God. When we can see God in all things, then we shall meet him face to face. When we can receive his wisdom through all things, then we shall hear his voice, speaking directly to us, in the beautiful silence of our own soul. When we enter this silence, as we may at any time, we know we are in communication with God, and we may learn the truth about anything that we have sought to understand. God is not a God of the future state alone. He is the God of all time, even the present. And he is at hand ready to lead us aright in everything that we may wish to do in the present. We may be taught now, by him, in all things pertaining to physical and mental existence as well as the very highest spiritual existence. And the more we ask of God, the more we please God. Lay not up for yourself treasures upon earth. Where the heart is, there our treasures will be also, and when the heart is in the earth, earthy, all that is beautiful in life will be lost. Our treasure is that which we love the best, but it is not wisdom to give our best love to things. Give your best love to the spirit of things and you will receive, not only the visible form, but also that sublime something that gives life and loveliness to the form. Seek the riches of the spirit and you gain wealth and happiness that shall never pass away. The richest man in the world is he who has found the diamond fields of the soul, while the poorest is he who is burdened with things that have not the spirit of things. It is our privilege to have abundance of all that is rich and beautiful in the visible world, but it is the wealth and the beauty of the soul that gives happiness. It is the treasures we lay up in the spiritual within that make all other treasures worthwhile. When we know that God is life, power, health, harmony and joy, we will receive those blessings in boundless supply whenever we feel that his presence is here. When we attain the consciousness of the omnipresence of God, we will receive from God whatever we know to be in God, the golden path to increase. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that which he hath. Matthew 13:12. The real element of possession exists in consciousness. What we possess in consciousness we inevitably will gain in the personal life, and no matter how well secured our external possessions may be, the moment we begin to feel unconscious that we may lose them, our hold on those things will weaken, and external loss will shortly begin unless this adverse state of mind is immediately changed. To consciously feel that everything that you need or desire is for you in brief, actually belongs to you in the real, is to be among those that hath, even though you may, at present, be empty-banded in the external world. To you shall be given, and you shall have abundance both in spiritual possessions and in visible possessions. But to consciously feel that you do not have real or permanent possession of anything, is to be among those that hath not, even though you may have visible wealth in great measure. From you shall be taken away, and those external possessions that you seem to have shall pass to other hands. This law is universal in its application and holds true in all matters, be they physical, mental or spiritual. The secret of gaining more on any plane is to consciously feel that you have more. Enter into the hath state of mind. Whether you desire life, health, power, wisdom, spirituality or greater abundance in external things, train your consciousness to feel that you have the real substance of the thing desired. Do not judge according to appearances, but continue to inwardly feel the possession of that which you claim as your possession. When the mind enters the feeling of conscious possession, the first gain is the fuller possession of yourself and your powers. You immediately begin to feel stronger. This will strengthen and enlarge your consciousness of gain, which in turn, will increase the power of accumulation that was begun in your system. You thus not only become larger and stronger in your own nature, but you gain a more powerful hold upon everything with which you may come in contact. You awaken greater and superior qualities in your own mind and soul, and you inspire faith and confidence in the minds of others. You thus create those advantages and essentials, both in the within and in the without, that are conducive to gain. When the mind enters the fear of loss and begins to feel that there is going to be loss, the first loss is the loss of self-possession. You lose your hold upon your own powers, and, in consequence, begin to weaken. Your faculties fail to do their best, your work becomes inferior, your personality does not attract as it did, and your power to inspire confidence in others is on the wane. You suffer loss in all things, physical, mental and spiritual, and you are daily losing ground. Finally, everything that you seemed to possess is taken away. But the loss began in your own consciousness, and you could have stopped it there if you had known how. The losing tendency can be stopped at any stage, but the only place where it can be immediately stopped is at its first appearance in consciousness. When you begin to feel that there is danger of loss, or when the general indications seem to predict loss, remove that feeling at once. Refuse to think of loss, refuse to admit the possibility of loss, refuse to recognize loss in any form whatever. Proceed to claim your own. Give all the power of mind and thought to the great truth that you do possess now, in the real, everything that you can possibly need or desire. Give full recognition to the boundlessness of your own spiritual riches, and live in the conviction that whatever you claim possession of in the within you will gain possession of in the without. The tide will turn before any real loss takes place, and instead of falling back into the world of the ones that hath not, you will advance farther into the richness of that world where dwell the ones that hath. In consequence, to you will be given, and you will have more than you ever had before. This method should be used with faith and perseverance whenever there is the least indication of loss. Negative conditions should be replaced with positive conditions, fear should be annihilated by faith, and every downward tendency should be converted into a strong ascending tendency. To live in the hath state of mind and grow steadily in the conscious feeling of possession, continuous growth in spirituality will be required. It is only through spirituality that we can grasp the reality of the inner substance of things, and we must gain consciousness of the inner substance of life before we can master those forces that make for perpetual increase in life. To live in the hath state of mind, it is also necessary to advance constantly into a deeper and larger conscious possession of those things that we already possess in abundance. There can be no inaction in consciousness. If we are not going forward into the larger and the more perfect, we are going back and down into the lesser. Therefore, no matter how much power we actually possess, we should daily claim conscious possession of more. No matter how perfect our health may be, we should daily enter into the consciousness of higher perfections of health. When we cease to grow in health, we prepare the system for sickness, but so long as we grow in health, sickness will be impossible. The same law is applicable both to external possessions and spiritual possessions. To retain what we have, we must daily develop the consciousness of more. The moment we decide to be satisfied with what we have, we will begin to lose what we have. There is no limit to the riches of the kingdom of life, and it is the will of God that man shall enjoy more and more of these riches, every day, so long as eternity shall continue to be. And to do the will of God is to bring the highest happiness to man. That the love of money is the root of all evil is true, providing we give the statement its true and full significance. When we speak of money, we do not mean those things simply that pass for money, but we mean all external possessions. When we love external possessions, the heart is in the without and not in the spirit, as it always should be to be in the truth. When the heart is in external things, we begin to live for things. The mind comes to the surface and consequently becomes shallow and material. The mind that lives on the surface is not in touch with the deep things of life, is not conscious of the inner light of truth, and is therefore in darkness. To be in darkness is to go wrong. And to go wrong is to create evil. Every mind that is not led by the inner light of the Spirit will go wrong. In fact, every wrong act comes because the mind follows external darkness instead of internal light, and it is only the love of other things that draws the mind out into the darkness of things. So long as we love the Spirit, the mind is in touch with the Spirit and is illumined by the light of the Spirit. When we are in this light, we will not go wrong. We will not commit evil, because we can see the right. And we can see that the right is the very thing we have desired, longed for, prayed for. The more deeply we love the inner life and the riches of the Spirit, the more spiritual and illumined we become. Accordingly, we can see more and more clearly how to do all things as they should be done. Our mistakes will decrease, and wrongs and evil will disappear. To love the life is to enter into the spirit of truth, and in the truth there is freedom, freedom from sickness, evil, weakness and want. Evil can grow only in materiality, and materiality is produced simply by our own confused thinking. But when we are in touch with the spiritual life within, our thinking is not confused. We are then in the light of truth, and we think the truth. In consequence, we no longer produce the darkness and discord of materiality. Instead we produce the peace and the harmony of spirituality, and all is well. When your treasure, that is, that which you love the best, is in the without, in the earth, earthy, your whole life will be in the earth, earthy. You will thus live continually in wrong thought because you do not see how to create right thought. Or mental light, even the light of reason, comes from within. Therefore, when the mind is so absorbed in outer things that it ignores completely the within, all thinking will be more or less at variance with truth, and evils must necessarily follow. But when your treasure is in the spirit, and you love the riches of the soul better than anything else, you will live on the mountain top. You will dwell in realms sublime, in the very light of His infinite wisdom. All your thinking will be illumined with that light. You will thus think only the truth, and He produces no evil who always thinks the truth. To lay up treasures in heaven is not to prepare for a heaven in the future, but to accumulate greater and greater spiritual riches now. That soul that is attaining real spiritual wisdom, that is growing daily in the love that loves everything, that is living in the peace that passeth understanding, that is being filled more and more with life and power from on high, that is gaining conscious realization of all the divine elements of pure, spiritual being, that soul is laying up treasures in heaven. Such a soul is actually coming into possession of those superior riches now, and is learning to use them today for the glory of God and the emancipation of man. To become a strong soul, to attain the mastery of the spirit, to become a living inspiration to all the world, to unfold all that is lofty, and beautiful, and sublime in the spiritual life, to realize the joy everlasting, and draw nearer and nearer to the Christ state. That is the purpose of him who is laying up treasures in heaven. And when we possess spirituality with all its qualities of high worth, we have the riches of all riches. We have that something that can produce all riches, not only in the spirit, but also in mind and body. That person who has found the riches of the within need never have any fear of external loss. Though all might disappear in the without, still, being in touch with the source of all supply, he could at once begin to regain everything. When we are in the spirit, we are upon the solid rock of all good. We possess the key to unbounded riches on all planes, and so long as we live in the spirit we shall not lose that key. When one door closes we can open another, sometimes several, and all that the heart can wish for, shall always be ours to possess, and enjoy. When we are in the spirit, we not only possess the riches of the spirit, those riches that actually make every moment of existence a full realization of the highest joys of life, but we also possess the power to supply the without abundantly. Being in perfect touch with the giver of all that is good in the world, there is no truth in the belief that we must necessarily relinquish external possessions the moment we begin to lay up treasures in heaven. That power that produces the riches of the spirit, can, and will, produce abundance in the external world as well. All outer things will invariably be added when the kingdom within is actually sought, and sought first, not only at first but always. So long as we seek only the treasures of earth we get but little of those treasures, while we get an overabundance of the suffering and pain of material existence. But when we begin to lay up treasures in heaven, we obtain the peace, the joy, the contentment, the health, the strength, the wisdom, the power and the life we so greatly desire. In addition, we obtain higher spiritual possessions without number, and an abundance of everything that is necessary to make the outer life full and complete. Live eternally in conscious unity with the infinite, of faith in God, of faith in humanity, of faith in yourself. Then live, think and act according to principles only, and there is nothing you may not accomplish. Great deeds in life are invariably brought about by higher power. And if we would be constantly in touch with higher power, we must live in the perfect faith and consciousness of the great spiritual within, where higher power has its center and throne. This, however, is not possible so long as we think more of the person than of the soul. To be centered in the Spirit, we must live in the Spirit, and give the Spirit our first thought at all times. Then we shall be filled with the supreme power of the Spirit, and our strength, both in mind and body, shall be daily renewed from on high. Resist not him that is evil. The true path to emancipation is to give so much thought, life and attention to the building of the good that we have not the time to even think of evil. Then evil will die for want of nourishment. The mind that is absolutely full of a strong, spiritual building power, has no room whatever for evil conditions of any kind. The life more abundant. I came that they may have life, and may have it abundantly. John 10:10. The greatest thing that man can do is to live. Everything that appears in any sphere of existence comes from life, and therefore everything increases with the increase of life. To live more is to become more, and gain the power to accomplish more whatever the field of action may be. To live more is to enter more fully into the richness and joy of life itself, and there is no joy that is greater than that which comes from perpetual growth in real life. The purpose of life is to live more life. The principal secret of perfection in any period of life is to live as large a life as that period can appreciate and employ, and to constantly add to the abundance of that large life is to make each period better than the one that went before. Growth in life means growth in health, growth in strength, growth in capacity, growth in mental brilliancy, growth in talent, growth in wisdom, growth in power, and, in brief, growth in everything that a normal state of existence can possibly need or desire. The mission of the Christ is therefore not purely transcendental, nor solely for some other world. The teachings of the Christ are applicable to every part of personal existence, and may be applied with great profit in every circumstance or event that can arise in the great eternal now. What is more, no person can do full justice to anything he may undertake to do unless he enters into full harmony with the great mission of the Christ. The life more abundant can come only through the Christ, and we all need the life more abundant if we are to be true to our own marvelous nature. The coming of the Christ, however, was not confined to a short period of time some 2,000 years ago. The Christ comes now to every one who enters the Spirit, and when he comes, he invariably brings the life more abundant. We may, at any time, enter the fullness of eternal life, and when we do, everything changes for the better. The life more abundant dispels the ills of existence in the same manner as light dispels darkness, and just as effectively, whatever those ills may be. The ills of personal existence come principally from two causes: ignorance of divine law and false desire. The coming of the life more abundant gives the mind the necessary power to understand the laws of life. When we are in the life eternal, we are in harmony with the laws of the life eternal, and will not misuse those laws any more. When we are filled with the richer life from within, we no longer desire the lesser things in the without. We will not care for the wrong, having found everything that heart can wish for, in the beautiful kingdom of the right. To enter the life more abundant, first lived the teachings of the Christ, not according to the letter but according to the Spirit. The Spirit is infinitely greater than the letter, and includes everything of worth that the letter may contain. Second, live now in the Christ consciousness. Know that the Christ is here, that his Spirit is within you and all about you, and that you can be conscious of his presence at any time by simply opening your own mind to his kindness, and tenderness and sublime love. Know that I am with you, even to the end of the world, and think on these things. The more attention we give to the great truth that the Christ is here with us now, the more we open the mind to the consciousness of his spiritual presence, and as we enter more and more into the consciousness of the Christ, we enter more and more into the limitless life of the Christ. Thus we become filled, through and through, with the supreme power of that life that is eternal life. The life eternal, however, is not distinct from any other form of life. It is the source of all life, and as we enter more and more into the life eternal, we gain more life on every plane of being. We then begin to express the life more abundant through every part of body, mind and soul. and thus demonstrate conclusively that a strong soul does not mean a weak body. The life of the soul is eternal life, and the more we unfold that life, the more health, strength and vigor we give to the body. The mind becomes more brilliant, the personality more powerful, and the character more beautiful. And above all, we ascend to that sublime life on the heights that is fairer than 10,000 to the soul. For whosoever would save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life for my sake shall find it. Matthew 16:25. When you lose your life for the sake of Christ, you let go of the limited life that is living in you in order that the limitless life of the Christ may live in you. Likewise, when you deny yourself and follow the Christ, you remove the personal self from the throne of your being and enthrone the superior spiritual self instead. There is therefore no sacrifice. You lose nothing but your limitations and your illusions, while you gain everything that the kingdom of God holds in store for man. The belief that it is necessary to lose something of actual value in order to gain the life eternal is not the truth. Poverty in the personal life does not produce spiritual riches, nor does the sacrifice of temporal joys produce the bliss of heaven. The idea of self-sacrifice must be eliminated, so long as we think that we have to sacrifice all that is good in the visible world in order to gain the joys and the riches of the invisible, we are out of harmony with the beautiful order of the cosmos. In the true order of things, all that is real is good, and all that is good, man has the privilege to enjoy now. The only things that we are required to sacrifice are our ills, our defects, our weaknesses, our shortcomings, our limitations. In brief, we are required to remove the personal self and its imperfections from our world of existence. The true self-sacrifice is that which refuses to permit personal imperfections to rule in the personal life, and gives up to the light, the power and the life of the Spirit. When you deny yourself in the true manner, you deny your outer mind the privilege of rulership. You no longer follow the desires and the beliefs of the flesh, you no longer obey the dictates of the body. You declare that the body must serve the soul, and the soul must serve the Christ. You thereby permit the supreme life of the Christ to live in you. The mind that was in Christ Jesus enters your mind, and his life and his power becomes your own. The lesser life is lost, the greater life has come in its place. The mere man in you is decreasing, while the divine in you is increasing and will thus continue until you are perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. To try to save the personal life is to live exclusively for the limitations of external existence. In consequence, the mind becomes so absorbed in the lesser life without that it is wholly unconscious of the greater life within. But we cannot receive the greater life from within unless we are in conscious touch with that life, and since the within is the only source of life, we cease to receive life the moment we are consciously separated from the inner life. To live entirely for the personal life is to be separated from the inner life, and therefore we are not receiving any more life. The personal life, however, that we are trying to save will be gradually used up, and thus we will lose what we are so anxious to save. But when we begin to live for the Spirit, and begin to follow the Christ into the vast spiritual realms of limitless life, we will find more and more life, and the more life we find in the vast within, the more life we will bring forth into the without. All the life that we become conscious of in the soul, we will express in the mind and the body, and the personal self, instead of growing weaker, will grow stronger and stronger as it is filled more and more with life and power from on high. And thus, by losing ourselves in Christ we gain everything that exists in the supreme life of the Christ. We lose nothing, sacrifice nothing, while we find ourselves all that we are in the image and likeness of God. Live a beautiful life wherever you may be and become a living benediction to all who may pass your way. You may see no immediate results. In fact, your beautiful life may have scattered its blessings so far and wide that you cannot find the exact places where the flowers grow that you planted, but that does not matter. You have given. In consequence, the world is better off and you are a stronger soul. You know that not a single good deed can be lost. Somewhere it will bless somebody. You know that every good seed that you may sow in the garden of human life will someday take root and grow. You may not remain long enough to see the sowers, but somebody will see those flowers, and the fact that your hand planted the seed is pleasure enough for you. To feel that you have given happiness to someone else, is the greatest happiness of all, and to know that millions will be inspired by the sublimity of your life, ages after you are gone, could anything give a deeper joy to the soul? And yet, this is a privilege that is not given only to the few. There is not a soul that may not look forward to such a future and to such a life. To be perfectly satisfied to let your light shine wherever you may go, without ever looking back to see if there were results or not, is the mark of a great soul. So long as we do not wish to give, unless we see visible results in exact places, our spirituality is not of the greatest, and so long as we require the personal testimony of those whom we have helped, to spur us on, our faith is nothing. He who has the true faith knows that spiritual living is a power wherever it is lived, and he never thinks of looking back to find if it was true. He scatters the seed, and leaves results to him that faileth not. He radiates the good and knows that that which is good can never cease to produce good. When you realize that you are an entity through which God is expressed, and that your mind should be so transparent that the highest divine light may shine through and illumine the outer world, you have found your true place. To remain constantly in that beautiful place means that a higher power will be flowing through your being, radiating in every direction, giving the spirit of truth to everything you may think, say or do. You thus become a personal expression of the word, and your life will be a message of truth to the race. Ye are the light of the world. Do not hide your spirituality in your feelings or your emotions. There is power in the spirit. Live this power, and give personal expression to everything that the spirit may contain. Then you will demonstrate to the world that the way of the spirit is the true way. When you are lifted up, hundreds and even thousands will come and go where you are going. Therefore, let the full glory of the spirit shine in your life. Let power from on high manifest itself in everything that you may think or say or do, and great shall be your reward, both in this world and in the world to come. The spiritual life deprives you of nothing that has real worth, and gives you more and more of everything that has high worth. Agree with thine adversary quickly. There is a spiritual side to everything. Enter into harmony with this spiritual side, and the discord that seems to exist on the personal side will disappear. Forget those elements that are at variance, and think only of those states that are perfectly at one with each other. You can easily find them. We find everything we seek, and whoever goes out to find harmony will discover that there is more harmony in the world than anything else, excepting life itself. Human nature becoming divine nature. There are thousands of people in the world today who have undertaken to live the spiritual life, and the majority of them understand, to a fair degree, the principles upon which such a life is based. Nevertheless, there are too many who do not have as great results as they ought to have, and they are at a loss to find the reason why. With the spiritual wisdom which we now possess, we ought to do greater things than were ever known on upon the earth before. We ought to be able to overcome every wrong, not only in our own lives, but also in the lives of all who are receptive to our spiritual work, and we ought to realize an ever-increasing abundance of infinite good and infinite power from on high. We ought to do all these things and much more, and when we can see distinctly where the two ways part, we certainly shall. When we know that we have such an exceptional opportunity for higher usefulness in this age, we cannot be satisfied simply to use the power of divine truth for the attainment of physical health and personal prosperity. There are other and greater things to work for, but not many have the secret path to the world of these greater things. However, the reason why is simple, and likewise, the reason why the majority do not secure as great results as they should in the lesser things, is also simple. And the reason is we cannot serve two masters, we cannot take two paths at the same time. When we come to the parting of the ways we must take the one that leads into light, and forget the other absolutely. When we learn that man is created in the image and likeness of God, we enter a new realm of thought. We have made a new discovery, and we have found another way to think and live. The former belief taught us to think and live as a sinner, as a weak human body. The new truth has taught us to live as a spiritual being, as a child of God, as a strong, perfect, divine soul. And here is the place where we must decide which way to go, as it is not possible to believe the old and the new at the same time and have result, nor is it possible to believe part of the old and part of the new at the same time and realize that power for good that the new may contain. There are many minds who believe in divine truth, and who accept fully the great truth that man is the image of God, but still continue to think of themselves as weak, human creatures. When the difficult task comes, and they fail, they usually become discouraged, and this is their language. Just as I expected, but then I am only human, only a weak, frail being, not able to cope with these things. Someday I may be able to overcome, but as yet I am too weak. I must not expect too much of myself, as I am only human. This is the drift of the thought in many a mind, and it explains perfectly why they have not overcome the wrong and attained the good. They are trying to realize the perfection of the divine within while recognizing the imperfection of the human without. They expect to attain divine power while persisting in living in the world of human weakness. They are trying to serve both the truth and the untruth, but we cannot realize the power of truth until we eliminate the untruth completely. The outer has seemed to be the only reality so long that the mind naturally thinks everything existing in the outer to be reality, and here is the difficulty. We think the outer to be substantial and the inner to be mere mental mist, but it is when we reverse this belief that we find the real truth. The statement that the flesh is weak has been a race thought for ages, and it comes natural to think of the flesh as weak. But the truth is that the flesh is weak because we have made it so, and we have made it so by claiming human weakness as our heritage instead of spiritual strength. He who lives constantly in the conviction that unbounded, spiritual strength is his inheritance now, will never for one moment feel that the flesh is weak. The flesh is what we make it, and it is just as easy to make it strong as to make it weak. Think that you are a weak, frail, human creature and the flesh will become the dwelling place of weakness, but know that you are a strong, invincible, eternal soul, and the flesh will become the very embodiment of strength, and will be filled with life and power from on high. We may philosophize learnedly about the beauty of spiritual thought, but that will serve no purpose unless the truth that is contained in our spiritual thought is stamped upon every word we express. We all realize the power of words. Whenever we speak we send a life current through every part of the body, and if the words spoken are the expressions of material belief, we give conditions of weakness to the body, and at times even disease. When we stamp every word, not with human thought, but with divine thought, every word will convey to the person the very spirit of life, power and wholeness. Through the power of speech a person can bring upon himself every wrong in the world, and through the same power he can bring upon himself every good in the world. Through the right use of words, uttered or unexpressed, a person can attain or obtain anything. Words are living forces, they create according to their nature, and they attract their kind. When we become as scrupulous about our words as we are about our clothes, we shall become a superior race. The parting of the ways is found where we can see the difference between human expression and divine expression. So long as our expressions are stamped with the belief that we are weak, frail or only human, we shall continue in weakness and in that smallness of character that we call human nature. But human nature is simply an undeveloped condition. It is not a permanent factor in human existence. It seems to be permanent simply because practically no effort has been given to the unfoldment and expression of man's divine nature. To say that we are human and that we must ever remain so in this world is not only the untruth, but such expressions give weakness and adverse conditions to the personal life. We cause the flesh to become weak, and remain weak by living in the belief that we are mere human creatures, and therefore when we meet adversity we fall down, become sick, or otherwise manifest the imperfection of that life that is lived apart from the Spirit. When we take the other path, however, and begin to recognize our divine nature as our only nature, there will soon be a change in events. When this path is taken we recognize limitations no more, and the term cannot is then forgotten. You never again permit yourself to say that you are sick, tired, limited, easily tempted or merely human. Such expressions you simply will not employ under any circumstances whatever. You know your divine nature, And every thought you think and every word you speak must express what you know to be true. Your every expression of mind, tongue or being thrills with the life and the power of eternal spirit. Regardless of obstacles or adverse events, you stand by your convictions of truth whatever may happen or not. It matters not to you what happens in the exterior. You are not an exterior being, you are a spiritual being, created in the image of God. Nothing that happens can affect you, disturb you, or even touch you. You are in Him, in everlasting safety. You live in the Spirit, you know what is true in the Spirit, and you think and speak accordingly every moment of your endless existence. Therealong the word of truth becomes a living power in body, mind and soul, and your entire being becomes a perfect expression of that divine word that is of God. There is a strong tendency to compromise with the undeveloped side of the person whenever we fail to demonstrate the absolute power of the Spirit. But this must never be permitted. No matter how many times you fail in the person, do not admit that you are weak. You are not the person, you are the soul, the perfect image of God. And the image of God is supreme strength regardless of what may happen in the person. Continue to think the absolute truth, even in the midst of sickness, failure, trouble and want, and those things will soon depart never to return any more. Father, I am one with Thee, one through all eternity, one forever in the past, one as long as time shall last. Thou in me and I in Thee, life of endless unity, this my dearest song shall be. Father, I am one with Thee. Father, I am one with Thee, sweetest thought of truth to me. I am filled with life divine, therefore boundless good is mine. All my life is lived in Thee. Perfect life of harmony, this my highest thought shall be. Father, I am one with Thee.